We'll go with that. And if it's not, we'll make it work.
You want to cool us off, you have some time, or
Hey.
we still welcome a native plants consultation.
Oh, yes, I would love to
No,
go. I'm sorry, I got so long.
Oh,
I will come over.
let's cool us off, whatever.
Okay.
That's like super.
Y'all are welcome to come to the table. I don't think we're gonna have more than another 3 people coming. So you're welcome to come to the table.
Okay, thank you.
And if you have to leave, understood. Hi Henry.
Hey,
How you doing?
pretty good, thank you.
Good. Yeah. I was just saying, people can come to the table. I think it won't be a huge, so not the planning commission or whatever, just wait, lots of people. We're very small.
I have these.
Very awkwardly sized
But
room.
just.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's
It's
fine.
like, what do I do with my hands, you know?
I'm just sitting.
Okay.
Thank you.
Alright, we should have one more commissioner coming,
Yeah, we have 5 more minutes.
okay, and I believe we'll have a commissioner coming via online, but I didn't really hear. So we'll see, this is always are we gonna have 3?
So did Allison, is she still on commission?
It's
Jennifer
Jennifer who did not
left.
re-up, yeah, exactly. That's right.
Hi.
Hello. Hi, Molly.
Hi.
Nice to meet you. I'm Amy.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us. Have a seat anywhere you like, and we'll introduce you as we get started, okay?
Interaction. They go.
I'm helping take some notes.
Got it for group there.
Thank you. I'll try to too. I don't remember
Sure.
what we had. I couldn't find our April minutes anywhere. I don't remember what I did with those. I know, that's kind of. We'll circle back to that one next time. Hello. All right, we were gonna just give one more minute here and then we'll get started. And we should be expecting a 3rd commissioner, so we have proper quorum. But if we don't, since there's just two of us, we're not outside the rules of being together. What we tend to do is just make this an informational meeting. We won't have much discussion amongst ourselves because we don't have everybody really making, and we won't vote on anything. Does that sound okay with everybody? That's kind of what we tended to do if we don't have quorum, because we don't want to waste the opportunity of having conversation with you all, whoever comes, and have some information flow, because we cannot keep up what's going on everywhere in terms of the issues in the city. All right. Okay. It's 7:30. I'd like to welcome everyone to the July 17th Urban Forestry Commission meeting for the City of Falls Church. My name is Amy Crumpton. I am the chair of this commission, and what I'd like to do first here is call to order and just go around the room and let everyone introduce themselves. Just tell us where you're from, and then we'll get going with our business.
Hey, I'm Jack Trainer, I'm senior planner for the city.
I'm Kurt Lawrence, environmental planner with the city.
Erin Flynn, City Council Liaison.
I'm Molly Moore. I'm the CBC Youth Rep.
I'm Eli Swainer, the urban forester with the city, standing in for Charles Prince, the city arborist.
I'm Tim Roche, I'm a commission member.
Henry Zhang, principal planner with the city.
I am Herb Holmes, deputy director of operations for DPW.
I'm Pat Conley, I'm with Falls Church Forward here to make public comment.
Thank you, and I want to welcome Molly. Molly is our new student rep from Center for Better Community, Citizens for a Better City liaison, and we're really excited to have you with us for the year, Molly. And you're at Meridian, is that correct?
Yes.
Great. What year are you?
I'm going to be a senior.
Excellent, excellent. Okay, you have a burning interest in urban forestry, or are you just kind of interested to see what we do?
No, I definitely am interested in environmental sustainability.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you for being here. All right, we have a buzzing.
Yeah, it'll be sporadic, it's a
If you're
fire
not
alarm issue.
concerned, I won't be concerned. It's kind of like being on an airplane.
It'll do it.
If the
First of all, that we have and have always and are happy to see townhouse construction. We always felt that residential type construction adjacent to our building was the best use or small scale retail, and so this fits what our objectives are, and so we're happy to see that. Secondly, Henry Zhang helped us put together a meeting with city staff that's doing the review, as well as the developer and the client, the homeowner, and it was excellent. I think it helped us better understand what the issues were. I think it helped everybody understand what our concerns are. At this stage, I think we're just fact-finding, which is, I think, about the stage that you're at as well. And we want to make sure that we understand what the questions and issues are. And I do appreciate very much his work and the work of the city to do that. He also loaned us a full size of the plans. The plans are online and available, but I would say they're unreadable unless your computer screen's as big as that. You won't be able to read what those plans are. And we were able to work through them, so I appreciate that as well. Key points. First of all, every site plan, and this is a unique one, should be dealt as unique. Look at what the neighbors are, what the relationship is to the other properties adjoining it. Look to the code, look to the T-zones. Each one should be looked at as a unique situation, and we want this looked at as unique, and that anything that was done for Oak Park is not really relevant to this and sets no precedent for this. That's not only our opinion, but I think the city staff agrees with that as well. And so I hope you'll take that in mind as you look at this. And then on specifically, what is the Broadway concern? First of all, we feel that rear setback that we would get for 609 Park Avenue is disappearing in this plan. And we're concerned about that because the T-zone amendments basically don't allow setback reductions unless there's affordable housing, and there is none in this case. So for other reasons of definition, that's being removed from the plan, but we want both the city and the Planning Commission to consider whether that is appropriate in this case. Secondly, there are fences, walkway, lightings, plantings, et cetera, that really aren't clearly articulated, even on the big plans. And we'd like to see drawings, representations. We really like to understand what it is we're facing, what it is this building will look like next to ours, and really understand that. I don't think the drawings to date really do that. Thirdly, stormwater, and this is really the most important things to us, because I detailed in my memorandum that we spent over $300,000 dealing with stormwater issues at the Broadway. We think we've got it under control. We haven't fully tested it in the biggest storm. The one we showed as a flood that occurred in 2006 was a 5-inch rain followed by a 4-inch rain. With climate change, that's not going to be exceptional anymore. And the city's infrastructure today isn't adequate for that. So we want you to take a close look at that, and we want you to look at impermeable surface, because the developer defines that as managed turf, et cetera, et cetera. I think walkways are walkways. I don't really know how the planters would qualify as impermeable surface. I'll read the definition that was in the T-zone amendments. Impervious area is an area covered by hard surface such as structures, paving, compacted gravel, concrete, or other man-made features that prevent, restrict, or impede the downward passage of stormwater into the underlying soil. So I don't really think that the planters or the paths that are going to likely be paved really qualify. So I hope you take a good look at that. I hope the city does. We have a private drain between our properties. No one quite knows who owns it or what the relationship is, so I'm hoping also the city takes a clear look at that. And then finally, looking at what the cost, looking at the greening of Lincoln proposal. That's a $2 million effort that the city is doing with federal and state tax money. This is part of that. This is part of that watershed, and we really need to make sure, both as a citizen that is immediately affected, but I think all of us, that these things are connected and that we follow them and they work together. I would just say, in terms of things that haven't been done, so we're off to a good start, I think, with communication. What I would like to see is I would like to see Tony Dudley involved in this review, because I think the greening of Lincoln is important for how it connects. I'd also like to see the city arborist involved in the review. He has not been involved in the review to date. And I think, the city staff should draw on what outside expertise it needs to really understand the water issues that we are facing, because, as I say, our investment has been significant, and we don't want the new residents who are our neighbors to have to undergo the same kind of effort we have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. Other comments, Ms. Bazemore?
Yes, our next speaker is Nancy Ingrisano.
I'm Nancy Ingrisano. I own and live in a unit in the Broadway condominium. I drew a little map. Looking north, this is the T-zone properties on Park between North Lee and Pennsylvania Avenue. This is our Broadway condominium on West Broad. You can see that we are in the back of the T-zones. Nobody can question that. And that's why I rise today to speak. It's a little confusing because the proposal for the Lee Park Townhouse development treats us as being on their side. I attended many of the public hearings when the City Council was studying changes to T-zones. At that time, it was always understood that the Broadway was back of those properties. But now I'm learning, because legally the corner lot is considered to have two fronts, it's illogically has two sides in terms of complying with setback requirements. Lee Park has decided to take advantage of those rules to the maximum, proposing to build to 10 feet from the property line with the Broadway. Perhaps that is unchangeable for the corner lot, despite leaving a feeling that it's pulling a fast one on the citizens of Falls Church. But that is the corner lot. Part of the future Park Lee development is 609 Park, which is not and has never been a corner lot, and wasn't a corner lot when T-zone changes were passed. As in my illustration, 609 Park has a front, two sides, and a back. They share the back with the Broadway, and according to by right T-zone rules, that property cannot build closer than 15 feet from the back of the property line. And that is what must be required. I'm told that your role is to look out for the future citizens and residents of Lee Park and make sure their future homes comply with the regulations the city deemed important for them. I would think that is also your role as to the current residents and citizens impacted by building on T-zone lots. I'm calling on you to do just that. Fulfill your responsibility. Insist that at a minimum, property from 609 Park, the larger of the two properties, cannot now build by right closer than 15 feet from the property line in the back that they share with Broadway. That is not only critical for this Lee Park development, but it establishes the city's insistence that by right rules must be followed for future T-zone property changes, and that the city meant what it said. 5 feet difference, it may not sound like much, but it's 50% at 10 feet, making a big difference to the citizens living on either side of shared property line, and it's required. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Yes, our next speaker is Kathleen Thompson.
You get two Thompsons for the price of one tonight. I'm Kathy Thompson, also live at the Broadway. Good evening. I submitted a letter that you may or may not have seen yet about the 15-foot issue, which I hope you'll talk to the city attorney about this if you feel that there's a difference of opinion between my look at this issue, because this is a more current issue, versus the general rule about if you combine lots, they become instant corner lots. But I'm not here to talk about this. There's a great TV program I recently discovered on WIDA called If You Lived Here, about the different neighborhoods around D.C. and the housing and how much the housing looks like and costs within each of those different neighborhoods. I bring this up because our planning commission, you all, in its site plan review, makes decisions on behalf of future homeowners. In this case, decisions on how livable the future Lee Park townhouses will be. When looking at the 48-page site plan, and I thank Henry for sharing the giant versions with us that sat on our dining room table for a week or so, because there's no way I could have figured out a lot of these issues without seeing them. I hope the Planning Commission members will ask the questions along these lines if I lived here. First issue, if I lived here, could I actually get my car in and out of my garage? Looking at the site plans, I won't give you a page number, you can find it. If I lived in Unit 6, could I hit the side of Unit 14? Looking at the site plan that I saw, it looked like the car had about a 6-inch clearance before it hit that townhouse. Maybe I'm wrong, it might be 8 inches, but if it's a foot, I'm amazed. And living at the end units, 13 and 20, the ones that are closest to the Broadway, could I reasonably maneuver my car in and out of my garage? I ask you to look at that because there's no swinging room in that. Secondly, if I lived here in these townhouses, would I feel safe? If there were a fire that blocked my front door, the only door, could my family get out through the garage? Could my child physically lift the garage door if the electricity was off to reach safely? I know in my last house, I could not lift the garage door once the electricity didn't work. It just did. Maybe it just wasn't hung right or was too old. These will be newer houses, but I could not lift the garage door. Then there's no back door to these designs. Third, if I lived here, could I follow the complex instructions on the page? You'll see it. It's about that long in the giant piece of paper. To maintain my bioretention planter in the front of my house, including the requirement to inspect it right after a rainstorm. What flooding might happen in my foyer in the den if the planter stopped up? I had this problem in the last house. Everything froze, and then it rained, and we had water all over the place because these things don't necessarily clear magically. So, fourth, if I lived here, will the trees planted by the long-gone developer actually be able to grow and thrive? Or will my HOA be on the hook for repeatedly replanting trees to comply with the plan submitted to the city as part of this site plan? I think townhouses are a great use for the land along Park Avenue. But I asked the Planning Commission to think about whether perhaps too many townhouses are being crowded onto this particular parcel of land. Perhaps all the problems I list here could be resolved if there was just a little bit more land for cars to maneuver in this townhouse community, for storing garbage cans, which are right now have to be in the garage because there's no place to put them, and that's why there's no door, and providing for drainage problems. We are very worried about stormwater, and for plantings that I don't know how they're going to live based on we have a very knowledgeable gardener in our place that's talking to the arborist when she has a chance because she's concerned about it. So I just ask you, when you're going through the site plan, think about how livable this will be for the next people. And I ask you to think about, are there just too many townhouses crammed on this small parcel? Appreciate your time. Thank you. And I appreciate your service.
Thank you.
Good night.
Anything else?
Those are all the petitions received.
Okay.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else here who wants to speak on any of the items on the agenda tonight? Okay. Okay, let's move on to the action items. We have two. One is the Wallace Street one-way conversion, and then our minutes approval. So let's start with Wallace Street. Mr. Stoddard?
Yes, thank you, Chair, members of the commission. The item before you tonight is for action, or for your final consideration, is the Wallace Street one-way street conversion for Missing Links Sidewalk project. This was before you recently as a work session item, and it's now coming back to you for your final consideration. Of course, your authority here is coming out of Section 1707 of the City Charter that requires the Planning Commission to review and approve proposals for widening, extension, narrowing, enlargement, vacation, or change of use of streets and public ways. Ferran Joe is back with us again tonight. Thank you, Ferran. And you can see throughout the staff report, he's made a series of changes in response to the conversation at the work session, including finding a way, obviously, to narrow that travel lane below that 15 feet that I know is of concern, and actually a proposal to include the city's first contraflow bike lane so that we can continue to have two-way bike traffic. So certainly not a first within the region, but it would be a first for the Falls Church community. But with that, I will turn it over to our lead staffer on this one, Ferran Joe.
Thanks, Paul. Excuse me. So last time we were here, we sort of talked about the one-way street conversion and including that sidewalk on Wallace Street. And then you all had some comments that we sort of took back and thought over and made some adjustments to the concept plan. So I figure we can go over, if you want to pull up the plan, we can talk about some of the changes. One of the bigger, I guess, issues or comments that we had from last time was that the width of the street was about 15 feet wide, and seeing if there was a way that we can find a way to reduce it. So one of the things that we tried to do is include bike lane, and we were able to, by shifting some of the curb lines, include a bike lane, a contraflow bike lane to sort of maintain two directions of travel, as Paul said, and then have the, I guess, northbound side be a shared lane. So we were able to get that width down. I think that also resolved another comment about the speed hump and how necessary it was. So by reducing the width, we were also able to sort of omit the speed hump from the design from last time. I think there was another comment about the curb ramps and seeing if we can make those sort of more parallel with the crossings, and we were able to accommodate that as well. And then I think there were a couple other comments that we sort of thought over but did not include in this iteration. One of them was trying to reduce the amount of driveways. So there's the 3 driveways that we're maintaining on Wallace Street. And so we, in talking this over with Zach, it seemed to be sort of, I guess, unprecedented, or there wasn't a precedent to remove the driveways or reduce the amount of driveways if we weren't already changing the lane use there. So because it was going to remain parking, and the property owners weren't really interested in sort of including the sidewalk project on their property at all. We sort of decided not to go that route and just maintain the 3 driveways we had. And then the other comment that we got was about seeing if we can include any kind of green space in the right-of-way we have between the property line and the back of the sidewalk. So we thought about it, and I think it would, the issue there would be that the bike shop, they actually use the door on the side of that street, and so didn't want to sort of restrict their access or sort of impact their business, trying to reduce the amount we were sort of impacting them already by sort of including the sidewalk. So we didn't want to proceed with those changes. It wouldn't be a whole lot of space anyway. I think at the narrowest point we have about 4 feet, and at the widest I think it's about 8 feet. So there's not a whole lot of room for trees anyway. So we decided just to sort of maintain what we had. If there's any questions, I can take those as well.
Great. Thank you very much, Ms. Cho. Thank you for responding to the comments. I really appreciate the kind of way you walked through those. I do wish the speed bump was in there. We talked about that last time. Do wish trees were in there, but I'm glad to see the contraflow bike lane. I think it's generally improved, and I understand that the narrow street is going to be a traffic calming measure too. So I appreciate that, but appreciate the way you responded to the commission's comments. So thank you for that. Let me open it up to other commissioners for any other comments, questions, concerns. Ms. Freelander.
I was a little disappointed that all the discussion for adding trees and a streetscape that actually meets the streetscape standards, since we're trying to make this more pedestrian street by narrowing the width. I was a little bit disappointed that was sacrificed for a bike lane in the opposite direction. When I'm looking at the bike plan, the master plan bike plan update, this area does not have a connection on South Washington at this location identified as a priority route. So I'm wondering, why are we adding and diluting the master plan for the bike where we want to be directing bike traffic? We're already going to be narrowing the street, making it one way. I'm in agreement with making it one way to slow traffic down and narrowing it, but I don't want to sacrifice having a streetscape that's pedestrian friendly when it's literally a barren wasteland over there right now, as a pedestrian. And so that was disappointing to see that, because I don't see a need to have a contraflow bike lane in there at this state, knowing where we're. South Maple is a priority route that connects further southwest onto South Washington to get across South Washington to other priority routes. And the other priority route in the other direction to get to Hillwood is through Annandale and across to Hillwood, and then to those other priority routes. So this is introducing bicycles into a location that, on a busy street, that I don't think we want to be doing at this stage. So that was my comment, not a question. Sorry.
It's good. Others?
Can I ask like a clarifying question? I think the reason that we're introducing the bike lane is to narrow the road, because without it, it would be, is it 15 feet?
Yeah.
So with the bike lane, that's why it's being added, is to narrow it. It's actually a really wide road without it. So that's the reason that it's being added.
I understand that, but I think we're sacrificing having the streetscape planters for that, because we're saying we don't have enough space within the right-of-way to put the sidewalk and the streetscape planters. My other question is what's the required width for a fire truck? Do we need a fire truck in there for future development when those lots do get developed at a higher height? What's the required width for a fire truck to be in there?
Yeah, so the lane width in the 15 feet, from my understanding, is to accommodate the fire trucks. So the actual width of the roadway hasn't changed, just the width of that lane. So a fire truck would have the same amount of space, turning space it would have if the lane was 15 foot. So the actual pavement hasn't changed. It actually increased a little bit, but it's just not marked for 15 feet.
I have a question about the contraflow lane. I've never seen one of these little sort of like mini lanes. I guess they have some of them in DC, but they also have like physical barriers, you know. I'm just wondering if it is going to be confusing for drivers who are coming up Maple or down Maple and turning onto Wallace, like who are used to this being a two-way road, to see that double yellow and think like, oh, I can drive in that little tiny bike lane. So I don't know. I'm maybe like if I saw it in real life and it, you know, it's only 5 feet wide, it would be obvious that that's not a car travel lane. But I think to some people who are used to it being two ways, I just worry a little bit about them trying to turn down through there. I don't know if it's just a matter of painting bikes only or something like some pavement markings or something on the street to make it clear to drivers like this is not a car travel lane anymore.
On the Maple side, you mean? Or
Yeah.
on the Washington side?
On the Maple side.
So we do have the do not enters.
I know,
but I
yeah.
think we could include
something on the
additional
on
signs
the
or maybe
pavement
additional
too,
pavement
maybe
markings.
just to underline it, since this is a conversion from a two-way to a one-way. Yeah. I was also bummed about the trees. I don't completely understand the reason. It sounds like we do have this space, but we just don't want to do it. Is it like a funding limitation that we have for the project?
Partially, but I guess I think the concern was that
It's like a change for that property?
yeah. So it seemed I want to misrepresent what Zach said, but a part of it was that where we're going to put those trees, it would just be in the stretch between the first driveway and say the cross or the ramp at Wallace Street, and I think there's a 6-foot minimum width between, I guess, the back of the sidewalk and the property line that we would require to put planters in there. And I don't think we have that the whole way through. It would only be there for part of the way. And then sort of as you get closer to Washington Street, the space between the property line and that the building narrows down to just a couple feet. So I think the effort would be to just sort of try to maintain as much of that space that the property owner was using, just to not sort of ruffle feathers on a project where they already weren't too interested in having us do it there. So we're just trying to sort of meet somewhere in the middle.
Okay. I mean, understood. I feel like even one tree would be better than no trees in that area. And the right-of-way line, it looks like it is actually getting wider as it approaches South Washington Street. Like, there might be more room there, though I guess there might be sightline issues too with trees near the corner. One quick question, and I'm pretty sure the answer is no because of the fire truck answer, but you know, if in the future we had funding to be able to install a sidewalk on the opposite side of Wallace, we would still need to maintain that 15-foot clear for the fire truck. So like we take out the contraflow bike lane and just make it like a little bike boulevard kind of thing and add that sidewalk, but that would narrow it back down to 11, but that would be too small for fire trucks. Is that correct? We wouldn't be able to add a sidewalk on the opposite side if we were to get the funding at some point in the future.
I don't think so. I think it might be too narrow. Yeah, I can take a look, but I feel like 11 foot would be too narrow for a fire truck to turn through there.
Okay. All right. That was my only other question. Thanks.
You skinnier fire trucks.
Yeah. In the CIP.
Mr. Stevens.
Okay. First of all, just as an overall comment, this is one of these items where you'd like to get everything, but we're not probably going to be able to do that here, and so I share Commissioner Friedlander's concerns about not being able to get some greenery on this street, and I guess I would request if there's a chance to go back and just take another look when you have a chance to see if there isn't some way to fit at least one tree or maybe a couple in on this street. I understand the explanations that you've given, and they make sense. I had a question about the width. This is marked as 10 feet, which is good. I like that. But I thought it said 11 feet in the text of the staff memo, so I'm hoping that the 10-foot is what
It's 10 foot.
applies. Yeah, I think 20 miles an hour is hard to achieve. We know we're not going to be able to put police vehicles every place, and so it really is up to the engineering, and I think from everything I've read, 10 feet is the appropriate width in order to start to send those signals to drivers that they should be going slower, so I'm glad to see that that's the case here. I don't know if this bicycle lane will work, but I don't think there's a lot of traffic on this road, and so if we were going to pick a place to give it a try, I think this is probably a good street to do that. Would have been interesting to get the CACT or maybe Bike Falls Church or somebody like that just to get their additional thoughts on this, but I'm sure staff have also given it some thought as well. Question on the pavers. It says install brick pavers. Are those going to be stamped brick?
No, I think it's going to be the same brick that's on Washington Street.
Might consider some stamped brick at this point. There's been a lot of discussion, I think, in the city council meetings on trying to make that change. The real brick seem to have maintenance issues that the stamped brick don't. So this, I would suggest going back and seeing if stamped brick may not be a better outcome for that. Let's see, I don't think I had anything else, so like some of the other comments, I appreciate you taking our comments and at least making as many of the changes as you could. And I know you're working with a tight budget, and when you start moving pavement, like the location of the sidewalk and so forth, then you ratchet up costs quite a bit, and you're trying to avoid that. So I guess on the whole, it's not ideal, but I can probably go along with what's being proposed here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stevens. Other comments? Mr. Krasner.
I won't belabor the issue, but overall, let's, we shouldn't let the old saying about the perfect being the enemy of the good. This is probably the most attention little Wallace Street has seen since it was first built. And it's obviously a huge improvement, even what you had the last time. But this is an improvement. I'm glad you're going through this process with us because I'm glad to see the speed bump was taken away. I didn't think we needed it, and so but that was done. On the contraflow lane, it's a cool idea to try it. One thing you might think about doing that doesn't cost a whole bunch is to color the asphalt, in that contraflow lane. Some folks do. I've seen that in other jurisdictions where they to signal to drivers that's not a lane for them. A lot of times, the colored asphalt can help set it apart in addition to just the signage and stuff. I don't know if, how real a problem that would be or not, but if it's not that expensive to add something like that, it could be good. And otherwise, like I said, greenery, all that stuff that my colleagues said, I completely agree with. But, obviously, I know it is a small project. And so overall, I'm excited to see us focusing, even on little streets and little areas of the city that don't get a lot of attention. So all in all, like I said, it's an improvement from last time. I'm happy with the changes.
Thank you. Mr. Duncan.
Thank you. I'm pleased to have lasted long enough to be on hand when Wallace Street gets its place in the sun. A couple of years ago, at least, I remember bringing up to the manager sorry look, to call it a wasteland is generous. This is arguably one of the ugliest stretches of street in the city. And so, I agree with what's been said that almost anything is an improvement, but I would underscore almost because, it is probably an interim act that we're taking here, somewhere down the line, 10, maybe sooner years from now, this area is going to be redeveloped. And so I'm interested in us doing something that improves the appearance of it and functionality of it right now but also could be undone or redone or widened or something when these parcels redevelop with more density. So I don't want to be too extravagant. I share the concerns and brought this up a couple of years ago that, the current vegetation that's particularly there at the corner of Maple and Wallace is just really, sorry and embarrassing looking. And my hope is that whatever we do here, that we come to an agreement with property owners and the city that even if it's just a patch of grass, that, somebody actually mows the grass and keeps the weeds down and does not allow it to get overgrown and unsightly as it is now. So I appreciate your efforts to, accommodate the businesses. I think that's very important. And since we're doing some things to accommodate them, I would like us to make sure that we enter into an agreement that whatever open space there is be maintained in a way that's, visually at least not offensive. On brick sidewalks, in closing, if you listen to the council meeting Monday night, the winds are blowing away from brick. And I would not be, the council did not quite get to the point of saying, no more bricks, because obviously we're getting ready to put in a couple of million of them up at West Falls. But for other projects, there was much interest in council on demonstration projects at the parklets that would be stamped brick, not real brick. Well, that idea didn't fly too much. They finally landed on the Quinn property being a sort of pilot for something besides the brick streetscape that we've all come to be used to. And that project is probably going to be in line behind this one, I would assume. I assume that once this is approved, you'll get right on it. So I would encourage the consideration of stamped brick rather than traditional brick because there's concerns about safety and maintenance and there's no developer to pay for the fixing of these bricks at this street. This is going to be on the city, whatever we put down. So let's put down something that looks good, but also can be maintained and is safe under bad weather conditions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other thoughts? Any comments? I'm sold on the stamp brick idea. Never thought about it until that, but that makes a lot of sense to me. Also disappointed about the driveways. Totally understand your comment or your conversations with the property owners. Hopefully that gets addressed if and when we redevelop this area. But I agree, generally in better shape than it was before, for sure. And I think the bike lane's a good experiment here. So if there's any other comments, it is up to us to formally approve the concept plan, so we'd entertain a motion for that from...
Mr. Stoddard had a comment.
Pardon me?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I just wanted to say, it certainly does not look like what we're getting out of, say, our Great Streets projects, right, whether it's Park Avenue or the greening of Lincoln. But the other thing is that those are also multi-million-dollar projects. And we know in the city that we have a lot of streets that are in need of sidewalk. Wallace, as an example, doesn't have one on either side. And so one of the benefits of this approach is that it does allow us to do most of the design work and engineering in-house. We don't have to excavate, which means we don't have to worry about utilities. This is a street that's underserved by utilities, so I don't know if that's a particular issue here, but it means you're avoiding the cost of excavation. You can get in sort of relatively easy, design the surface treatments, go out with a standard set of materials under standard contracting and get this done. And the city for the last couple of years has been running the Missing Links sidewalk program, and it's been a popular one so much that we can't actually get to all the requests that are in the queue. And so I think this approach is a positive one in terms of building that accessibility and getting sidewalks constructed. And then when we do have a need for a larger treatment, that is something that we either grant fund or we look to partner with the private side when they redevelop it. Obviously, if either of these sides of the street came in for redevelopment, we'd get the full right-of-way width that's needed through the site plan process or the special exception if that preceded it, and of course proper sidewalk, streetscape, and street trees.
Well said. Completely agree. Mr. Stevens.
I can go ahead and make the motion, but Mr. Hyra, did you have?
No,
Okay.
no,
Go ahead and get this started. Whereas the city charter, section 17.07, mandates that the planning commission approve proposals for widening, extending, narrowing, enlarging, vacation, or changing use of the city streets and other public ways, and whereas the proposed design change for Wallace Street is consistent with the general location, character, and extent of the comprehensive plan and South Washington Street's small area plan, now therefore I move that the planning commission approve the Wallace Street sidewalk concept plan as presented today, July 17th, 2024.
It's been moved.
Second?
Second by Mrs. Coman. I guess we need a roll call vote. Ms. Bazemore.
Yes. Chair Puentes.
Yes.
Vice Chair Comont.
Yes.
Mr. Stevens.
Yes.
Mr. Krasner.
Yes.
Mr. Hyra.
Yes.
Ms. Friedlander.
Yes.
Mr. Duncan.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Joe. Thanks for responding to the comments, and thanks for your presentation. Really appreciate it. Okay. All right. Next action item is approval of the minutes of June 26, 2024. Any comments on the minutes? All right. Seeing none.
I had no comments.
You have one comment?
No, I have no comments, but
Okay.
if anybody else does, speak now, because otherwise I will move approval of the minutes as presented.
Okay.
Second?
Been approved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, the minutes are approved. Moving on to our work session items, we're going to start with the Yassini Jewelers site plan. We've seen this once before. Obviously, a lot of work has been done on this in the interim weeks and months, so looking forward to hearing from the applicant. Mr. Stoddard?
All right, thank you, Chair, members of the commission. This is your second work session on this application. Oops. Sorry about that. This is your second work session on a site plan application, munis number 2023-0138. Oh boy. All right, let's see, by Chris Forsberg, agent for the owner, for redevelopment of approximately 0.26 acres, 11,339 square feet of land located on 1100 West Broad Street, RPC 51219-001 of the Falls Church Real Property Record Zone B3, general business to demolish the former Capital One Bank and building a new jewelry store. So this is your second work session on this item. Your previous work session from the schedule section in the back was held on February 21st of 2024. Since that time, the applicant and staff have been working positively to address the comments that came out of that work session, as well as the staff technical comments. And as you can see in the site design and the building renderings, there have been some positive changes made since you reviewed that first set of application, since that first application. You can see in the staff recommendation, we are suggesting that you all hold your work session tonight, provide some comments, and you can see a sort of a key list of items that staff has highlighted beginning on line 16. With that by way of setup, I will turn it over to our case planner, Mr. Jeff Holler. And then the applicant is also here to present an application, present as well.
Thank you, Paul. Good evening, Chair Puentes and the members of the Planning Commission. I'm Jeff Holland with the planning staff. As Paul had mentioned, tonight is the second work session for the Planning Commission to review a proposed site plan for the new Yassini Jewelers store at the corner of West Broad and Falls Avenue. The project includes a demolition of the former Capital One Bank and to replace its 1,700 square foot ground floor footprint with a new location. Their recent submission, the applicant has requested multiple waivers for parking lot perimeter and interior landscaping, as well as a parking reduction that staff believes will not be necessary. Updates and applicant responses to the Planning Commission comments from the February 21st, 2024 Planning Commission work session are located on line 36 of the staff report. Many of these comments led to a redesign of the site and also of the front facade. The proposed development is a permitted by right use in a B3 general business district and is consistent with the land use vision of the city's comprehensive plan. Line 87 to 191 of the staff report includes a more detailed analysis of the project against the comprehensive plan, West End small area plan, design guidelines, and streetscape standards. Notable recommendations for this area include the promotion of redevelopment, which incorporates vibrant retail as part of an attractive, walkable gateway into the city and builds upon a sense of place through consistent streetscape and materials. To date, staff has reviewed 3 submissions of the site plan for compliance with city codes, policies, and regulations. As you may remember from the previous work session, the first reviews of the application materials, staff had identified several instances of missing necessary information or proposed site features that would require waivers of site plan requirements in order to be recommended for approval. The applicant's second and third submission reduced the number of these missing items but did not address several others. Staff has also identified some inconsistencies between the engineering and the architectural plan sets. Also, with this third submission, staff has been able to review the requested waivers and their justification. Most notably, the requested parking waiver is not necessary, given that there is a surplus of proposed parking. This may also mean that some or all of the required 5% parking lot interior landscaping or landscaping buffer may then be provided as opposed to waived. Staff comments on the third submission of the materials were transmitted to the applicant on July 3rd, 2024, upon completion of our review. Just one other procedural note to mention that tonight the Cini Jewelers site plan is under review next door by the Urban Forestry Commission, and a recommendation from them will be made available before any public hearing on this application. However, while site plans are typically also reviewed by the Architectural Advisory Board, the AAB was not able to reach quorum for their July 10th, 2024 meeting in which the project was scheduled to be presented. And the AAB recesses in August. Since City Code requires that the site plan submittals be reviewed within 45 days, staff recommends that the Planning Commission proceed with its review at this time. I do believe this actually goes, that also stands for the Leon Park townhomes as well. We have the project's architect here with us tonight, as well as the project's engineer online to further discuss the project. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Halloran. We have a presentation here as well.
Yes, Your Honor. I'm Hamid Momni. I'm the architect on the project. And last meeting, you had 2 recommendations, which is adding windows in the front of the building, which we have done. And we have some 3D rendering that can show that. And we removed the drive-through that was there by the bank. It's completely gone, and
It's also in the plan set for anyone who's looking.
Yep.
24, yeah, sheet 24 and 5 of the plan set, it's in there. So people can see it.
So as recommended, we added 3 windows in front of the building. You can see on the 3D renderings. And we removed that driveway, the drive-through that was there. So those are the only architectural recommendations that you had during your last session. And I'm here to answer any questions about the proposed new revised elevation of the building.
Anything else from staff, or?
No, that concludes our staff presentation. Thank you.
Okay. Any comments from commissioners? This is a reminder, just a work session item, so.
I guess one thing I should comment, I know it came up earlier about sort of what happened to all the city arborist comments. Charles Prince, the city's arborist, is out of the office on medical leave. And so we do have a second certified arborist on city staff. Eli is the, oh gosh, I know him. Let's see, there he is. Eli Swadner is also a certified arborist. He's actually the head of our tree crew. And so while Charles is out, Eli's going to be reviewing, of course, all the development applications. He's actually sitting in with Urban Forestry tonight on the other side of that wall. So we will be getting those reviews. It's just taking us a little bit of time to catch up with where we are in the timeline.
Thank you. Small correction there, actually, Paul. I'm sorry. Charles did review the latest submission, and he actually indicated that he had no comments on the submission. So but our interim arborist, yes, he will get any future submission and will be part of the review.
So it's no comments from the arborist at this time?
At this time.
The expectation that...
Yes.
Yes. Thank you. Okay. Comments from commissioners? Let's see, Mr. Krasner and Ms. Freeland.
Yeah, I just had just a question to start off, just, procedural question. Just the issue of the architectural board, is there a mandate for them to review it? Or is that an advisory thing? Where does that live in? I know we have a statutory, authority to approve site plans.
We did have to look into this.
Where does that live in the city code, or where is it?
Yeah.
Or is it just over advisory,
Yeah, we did look into this, and it does say that the Architectural Advisory Board does have to review site plans, but it also does indicate, along with, I think it's the Historical Board, does also have a certain period of time in which they must be given the opportunity to review it. So as I had mentioned, the AAB had it on their schedule this past month. They were not able to meet quorum because they actually have a lot of vacancies on the board right now, actually. So they were not able to meet the quorum and have a meeting, but they were given opportunity to review it. I'm the liaison for the AAB, and I've told them that I still am welcome to any and all comments. They have all the materials, and so.
So we're not precluded from acting in the absence of their recommendation. It kind of, it's like a default of
The only thing I can say is that if our review continues on past August and goes into September, then it will be part of their agenda to review it. So.
Right, and then you reference the 45-day review cycle. Is that in the ordinance? Is that in the zoning ordinance? Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is, right? Yeah. And that's, again, is that discretionary? Is that mandatory 45-day, or is that, again, recommended? Failure to meet the 45-day doesn't result in an automatic approval, does it?
No, but I do think that there is a bit of a responsibility by the city staff to keep things moving along, despite an advisory board not being able to meet on it.
I understand that, and again, we'll see how my fellow commissioners feel about not having their input. How vital it is or not. We have a few people here with architectural background, but anyhow, okay. That was my only question. I have other comments, but I don't know if I want to dive into that now. Or sure. Okay. Overall, like I said, I appreciate the changes. I guess for the applicant, I appreciate the changes in the design. I know I think I made a bunch of comments about the lack of windows and how kind of stark it was before, and so, like I said, I'm a fan of contemporary architecture, and so I never had a problem with kind of your concept that it was kind of it should be a very interesting building, but I did think that the lack of fenestration and was going to be a negative. Now you've addressed that pretty well, I think. And so, that's a positive change, and same goes for the, removing the curb cut. That's not that's a different issue related to, again, pedestrian safety and just, again, improving the streetscape there and having all the access off the side street, which is preferable, I think. So anyhow, that's all. Both those are positive changes. I'll echo, staff's comments in the report about, if you're overparked, if you're truly overparked, it sounds like you may be. I certainly would prefer the plantings. The site's, again, it's a small site and it's largely, impervious today, but anyway, we can improve that with the redevelopment, would be I would be positive. I get it that you're adjacent to a funeral home and a tire repair place and across from a car wash. I mean, this is it's not that we're looking out necessarily for residential neighbors and unlike, disparate uses, but just for beautifying the site and putting some greenery on a site that's, kind of hasn't been looking great in the last 5 to 10 years. So I would, if you are in fact overparked and, I feel like this type of business is not attracting high volumes of patrons, so perhaps, the minimum amount of parking might be more than enough. So, but overall, like I said, I think the changes are positive and I'm happy to see that. One last thing, apologize. So where you're showing brick, in the parking area, I mean, is that going to be pervious or impervious? Where you're showing, there's asphalt, and then you're showing some of the parking spots as like pavers. Is that for stormwater? Is that for stormwater quality?
It's that drive-through, we replace it with some paving.
Right, but like behind that, I don't know if the staff knows what I'm getting at. Like they're showing some of the spaces in the parking area, the ones closest to the bank building or to the jewelry building is like a
spaces. So.
Right, but like but the shading is shown as like it's like the I don't know, I gotta look at the legend. I mean, is it? I think one side shows
Those are permeable pavers.
they are permeable. I'm hearing a voice from the ether.
Hi, this is Erin from Sarah Engineering. I'm sorry.
Oh, I didn't realize we had an engineer.
Assisting.
I'm sorry, I would have asked the engineer. I wouldn't be looking at the architect. Okay, so those are permeable, and so that's for stormwater quality, right? Is that what we're using those for?
Yes, those are for stormwater management.
Okay, all right, and those are going to be permeable pavers. The rest of it is asphalt.
Yes, because it drains towards the permeable pavement.
Okay. All right.
And there's also bioretention along the building.
Right. And how much of that is, I mean, is it all, I don't know what's on the site today. There's probably, I don't know how old that building is. So this is all new, right? You're not reusing any of the previous, right? I don't know if there is any stormwater management on that site today. There might not be. But whatever. And again,
we didn't identify, when we did a survey, we didn't identify any existing stormwater management systems.
Right, I didn't think there would be. Okay, all right, I just wanted to confirm what I was reading on the plan was accurate, that's, all right, so that side is going to be pervious. So anyhow, so yes, you could keep those spots and then lose some of the spots on the other side if you don't need them, and put some additional plantings there. I think it would be an improvement. That's my main comment. That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Grasser. Ms. Freelander?
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. I have some questions first. Just
I'm so sorry. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I'm sorry?
He said that planters, and I was trying to figure out where to put planters, but I'll ask.
Yeah, and I was saying if you could put plantings in lieu of some of the excess parking spaces that are now shown as concrete.
Okay.
That's what I was getting at.
Okay.
If you are in fact overparked per the ordinance requirement for this use.
Yeah, for your comments, I saw that the required is 8. We're at like 11 or 12. We're at 11.
Right. Right. So you have 3 or 4 extra. Right. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So for the arborist, because I have a question regarding the landscape plan, because there are 2 different landscape plans. One that is on the L.01, and that's dated 4/15/2024, and then there's a site plan 002, which is dated November 22nd of 2022, and those are very different landscape plans. And the older dated one shows the overhang, but the newer one on the L sheet that has the plantings identified what they are does not show the overhang. And it looks like some trees are actually located where the support for that cantilever is. And those trees grow to be about 20 to 35 feet. So I'm concerned that maybe we need to have an accurate landscape plan that the arborist is looking at and commenting on. because it's very confusing right now, what is actually scheduled to be where. Because the one that is dated in November of 2022 looks like it's more current and it's more developed, but it doesn't specify which plantings are which, right? So I think that would be helpful. I'm not sure which one the arborist is looking at right now or has looked at. So, and I would think that with that, the Urban Forestry Commission is probably also going to have a lot of questions surrounding which they're supposed to be looking at. So, my other question is also for staff. It looks like there's a lot of signage, which is great, but I just,
But you passed the landscape plans. Oh, sorry. I thought you prepared. I'm sorry. Keep going down.
For the signage, have we received a signage package? I'm sorry. I thought you were, there must be a lag on the line. Were you going to respond to the landscaping question?
The only thing about the landscaping, you said that the older one seemed more current. I was confused by that statement.
Because the one that's shown on the screen right now, which is, this one states it's sheet L01. The cantilevered portion of the building is not shown. And it appears to be over a tree.
We had a previous, I guess, session like this back in February, and during that meeting, we were asked to remove the curb cut on West Broad because we already have one on Falls Ave, and within that, we moved the cantilever because it was for a drive-through for the bank.
It's in the rendering.
It's in the rendering, though. So I agree with everything with removing the curb cut on West Broad to achieve more landscaping, but the building rendering indicates a cantilevered portion that is on the second floor that extends over that pedestrian walkway that is to the west of those buildings. Of what we're looking at as the shaded building here, that is not shown on this plan. So the cantilever that lives above those trees is not shown. And those trees appear to be 20 to 35 foot tall trees. If you look up what the tree type is, the Carpinus carolina.
I think that was an example of what Jeff said, that we need the architects and civil need to coordinate a little bit more.
Yeah.
What was the cantilever, in or out?
The cantilever's in, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, because that's what we're looking at.
Picture of it right here.
So yeah, I think more coordination is required before we get a full report from the city arborist's office on that. I did have a question also about signage, in that have we been able to calculate if the signage is to code and we have the appropriate signage in the appropriate locations? And I know we don't have a signage package yet, but maybe that's something that needs to be addressed in your next submission.
We'll work on that and submit it.
Do you want me to go into comments?
Please.
Or no? Okay. So I do appreciate the thought and the care that you put into our comments with regards to the curb cut on Broad and the added visibility and transparency at the sidewalk level. I think all of those are great things. I think what's really difficult in reviewing this package was that it's really hard to understand what the materials are and where they're being used all the way around the building. And in addition to the landscape, trying to figure out what is there. So I'm looking forward to this project because I think it's a really unique design, and I think it gives us that uniqueness of place that we're trying to strive for in our comprehensive plan. So I think it's a great concept plan. I just really want to see the development of it and the addressed comments from the city as well. Reading some of the comments, it was also really difficult to understand if you're responding to all of what they're asking, because it feels like there's a lot of comments that weren't addressed that have to be readdressed. So I think a few more meetings to sit down with the Department of Public Works to really understand what it is they need on those documents, I think is going to go a long way. Because I think this is a great concept for the location, and the way that you've addressed our comments for the streetscape it's really starting to come together in the rendering. So I'm looking forward to it actually coming to fruition, and to get there, got to work with the city to figure out how to get them what they need in terms of, the trash truck, and making that a safe turning radius in and out, and making it look like it's realistic, because I was a little bit concerned that the approach in isn't realistic, because I agreed with a lot of the DPW's comments on that. Let's see, and then there's a couple of other comments on one of the civil sheets that also still refer to DC standards. So we got to make sure that you pick up not only the Maryland standards, and change those to Virginia standards, but also the DC standards that are being referenced as well. But I'm really looking forward to seeing this further developed after you've worked with city, and maybe have another couple meetings with them to get through all the comments. Thank you.
I don't know if it's asked you or who asked us to, but we were going through the comments, and one of the comments was talking about basically the trash truck coming in and out, and can we reverse in, or do we have to come in front end and leave front end?
I know there was probably some conflicting comments that have cropped up on that issue. There is a stipulation in the city code that car parking cannot back out onto the public right of way, but as the planning and zoning staff have looked at that, we're of the opinion that same sort of restriction doesn't hold for trash and loading. And I think that the principle behind that is trash and loading is a fairly uncommon thing. It's not something that's happening as a matter of routine throughout the day. Larger trucks have backup alarms. They have professionally trained drivers. And so I think the planning and zoning staff is of the opinion that, especially when you're thinking about these smaller lots like this one, that allowing the trash and loading actually does a lot for you in terms of urban design and walkability, because it allows you to get to a greener, more landscaped site, versus, it sort of took heroics to show the turning movements in the parking lot, and as a result, almost 30-40% of the hard surface is just for that three-point turn. And so I think it is acceptable to have the trash and loading back, either back into the site or back out onto the public way. And that is, and I will say that's a common condition even in our special exception projects. For example, the Lincoln at Tinner Hill has trash and loading backing out onto Maple Avenue.
Because it was a comment by every agency, so how do I address that? Do I just say, how do I address that comment? For the people that aren't here.
Sure, I think in the comment response, you can just say sort of per conversation with planning staff.
Anything else on that, Ms. Sarah?
That's the only thing for that one.
I have one more.
Please,
Sorry.
just for you. Go ahead.
And then the photometrics, if that could be developed a little bit more, the light throw study, because that also there's no calculations, at least on the handout that we received. So I'm concerned about pedestrian safety, especially in those, where you've got sidewalks and walkways going underneath the building. So I would like to see the photometrics calculations and a little explanation of those as well.
We'll revise it and submit the new one.
Thank you.
Good thoughts.
Thanks.
Ms. Coleman? Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
You want me to go? Okay. I was also going to ask about the 2 trees under the cantilever, so thank you for doing that. So I noticed that there are some compact spaces on the plan, and those are not permitted with city code. So I'm assuming that that would mean some reduction in the parking count, or if we're at 11, maybe we're at 10, if they're standard spaces rather than compact. Have you looked at that, what the actual count is?
Yeah, that's why we said, yeah, we revised it, and now we're at 11, so we still have room to reduce.
You're at 11 with them all being standard spaces?
Yeah, it was the only thing that was kind of consistent, because we saw one of the comments said 9 by 19, and the other comment said 9 by 18. So, yeah.
Okay, but 9 foot wide.
I believe it's 9 by 18. We'll double
Okay.
check, yeah.
It's 9 by 18?
Yeah. I'll double check for you, but.
So if the truck, I mean, if what Mr. Stoddard just said, and the truck does not need to make that turning movement, then presumably you could bring those parking spaces all where the compact spaces are, all the way to the edge of the property. And then you have, I mean, I don't know how you want to organize your parking lot, but it seems to me like there's suddenly, without the...
With this new information, we're planning on reducing in the parking lot by, but yeah, and also...
And putting green things in there instead.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
That's
the area
good news.
where the trash is, we're planning on putting green area there instead.
Okay, trees would be
hopefully
nice. Yeah.
Okay.
We like trees here in Tree City, USA. And on Falls Avenue, too, I just wondered about, with some of the renderings show trees sort of flanking either side of the driveway, but that northeast corner is empty. Is there a reason there are no plantings in that corner? I think northeast, like the top right, if it's a diamond.
Where the trash is?
No, on the opposite corner on Falls Ave. Flanking to the right of the driveway entrance, there's sort of an empty.
Oh, okay. We just put shrubs there. Well, we can put trees there. Is there any type of specific type of trees? Like just a native tree is fine.
Natives are great. Yeah. Generally, I'm also really excited about this project. I think the architecture is really, really cool. It's distinctive. It's really beautiful, I think, actually. Even if it is like a big black box, I'm a fan. But yeah, that's my main concern with this, is just trying to get some more greenery on this site, if possible. And then it sounds like there's a number of comments that either need to be addressed from Public Works or that are sort of conflicting with the plan. So I'm expecting that we'll have a better, much more consistent submission for the next one. Thank you, and thank you for being here to answer our questions.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Coleman. Mr. Stevens.
Yeah, thanks again for addressing the curb cut on Broad Street. I think that was a big improvement, so again, thanks for that. Just not sure on the Falls Avenue landscape buffer. Is that something that the applicant will provide, or will there be a waiver to request that it not be provided?
With the reduction in parking and the new information that we get back in and back out, we are planning on being able to meet that specific one as far as the waiver, so we don't need that waiver any longer.
Terrific.
So I think it was 10 feet from property line to the property line to parking space, I believe it was.
Yeah, it's pretty forlorn along Falls Avenue right now, so I think that would be a big help. So it just looks like all of these potential waivers are just going to evaporate. So
the only one that won't is like the perimeter one, because along the northern property,
right, yes. Yes.
Yeah, but along the property to the other side where the trash is, that one is fine with a 10 feet buffer.
Yeah, the perimeter doesn't really make any sense to me, so I think that, at least from my perspective, should be fairly easy. So I guess I'm just left with
So we'll just only have one waiver, really.
Yeah, Okay, that really leads into my last comment, which is I hope that with staff, we could kind of make the final thing that we would review to be as clean as possible, so we don't have a lot of requests for administrative, for example, if there's consistency between the architectural and the engineering plans, to get kind of resolve any of those inconsistencies before it comes to us for a final vote. I'd appreciate that. So, but with that, I think we're making good progress, and hopefully we'll bring this to the finish line here pretty quickly. Thanks.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Stevens. Other comments from commissioners?
Just one quick one. Yeah, I agree with Mr. Stevens that moving forward at a pace is desirable. I'm curious, is there anything in particular that staff needs from the Planning Commission to facilitate nailing down these last few issues that we have with the applicant? Do I need to pound on the table about something or refrain from pounding on the table about something? I mean...
I can't think of anything right now. I think we have kind of the road ahead of us is pretty clear as far as all the cleanup items that we have to do and before we bring it back to you. So.
Okay, good. What's the calendar, Paul? Maybe this is your question for this to come back to us. Are we aiming for September or?
Yeah, the standard turnaround that we have in terms of customer service is that from time of application, or in this case resubmittal, we work to hit the Planning Commission hearing that's approximately 1 month out from that. Internally, we need technical review, but also most importantly for public noticing, we have to make sure that the yard signs are up, any sort of letters go out with the required notice of your all's public hearing. And so really it's dependent on the resubmittal date and then just how that fits with the Planning Commission meeting first and third Wednesdays. Okay. But the proposed schedule is here on the back. So if we can get to a resubmittal on, it looks like August 19th, then this would come back to you on September 18th. If the submittal comes back earlier than that, then obviously we would look for an earlier meeting date.
Okay, thank you. Just one quick question on the parking. I'm curious for the applicant to give us some notion of how many parking spots are expected to be taken up by staff who are going to work this building. Now, in your current location, you've got the whole shopping center parking lot to spread your staff out into. Is the parking situation that you're mapping out here including an expectation that staff will park on site? I hope so.
I believe they will have probably 5 people working in the building, between 5 to 6. That's what they have actually right now in their other location.
Is your mic on? Can you speak into the mic? I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, in the current location, they have 5 people working in there. I guess in this location, they will have probably the same.
Okay, so help me out here. The number of parking spots that you've plotted would include 5 or 6 for staff, and how many customers at any one time? Maybe 2 or 3, or?
Well, they don't receive a lot of customers at the time. I mean, they only allow 2 or 3 to come,
right.
And that's how they are working right now, and I guess they will keep doing the same in the new location.
Yeah, that would be my expectation too, that it wouldn't be need to be heavily parked, because there's no more than 2 or 3 customers at most in the building at any one time. I just would like to see all the parking for the business, staff, and customers contained on the site itself, rather than spilling over into Falls Avenue because of reasons, just because that seems like an opportunity that we could accommodate here with this plan you've got. I mean, I was a customer of the old bank very frequently, and the parking lot was tight. There was no getting around it. So I would always in favor of more greenery, but I'm also in favor of adequately parking businesses when we have an opportunity to sort of push the reset button, and this is such an opportunity. So that would be my only That'd be my only thought as you get deeper into the parking question from my perspective. Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Duncan. Any other comments from commissioners? Any other questions? Well, I think you're hearing a lot of support for the design, for the project. Appreciate Mr. Stotter's comments on the customer service aspect from city staff side. You've also heard, I think, we really want to make sure that we're seeing the most consistent materials. A bunch of commissioners talked about that. Make it easy for us to move this thing along. There's an awful lot to like here. I agree with everybody. This is going to be a really good project for the city. Let's just make sure that everything is consistent and complete as possible next time we see it. So, anything else from anyone? All right. Thank you very much. See you next time.
Thank you all. Thanks.
See you next time. Thank you, guys. Bye.
Oh, thank you, Ms. Sarah. All right, let's move on to item 7B, the Lee Park Townhouse Site Plan. Mr. Stock?
Thank you, Mr. Prentice, and Chair Prentice and members of the commission. The next item before you is, oh boy. All right, it's your first work session on this item. It's double titled. There are two applications. One is a site plan, one is a subdivision. So it's site plan application Munis number 2024-0416 by Peruz Khan Malik and Farinas Amarcel, Park 609, and Spinazar LLC, North Lee 120, applicant for redevelopment of approximately 0.69 acres, 29,849 square feet of land located at 609 Park Avenue, RPC 51-130-022, and 120 North Lee Street, RPC 51-130-018 of the Falls Church real property record, Zone T1, Transitional District, for construction of 20 new townhomes known as Lee Park Townhomes, and the related application, subdivision application Munis number 2024-0416 by Peruz Khan Malik and Farinas Amarcel, Park 609, and Espinazar LLC, North Lee 120, applicant to consolidate two existing parcels located at 609 Park Avenue, RPC 51-130-022, and 120 North Lee Street, RPC 51-130-018, and re-subdivide into one common parcel and 20 fee simple lots for construction of 20 new townhomes, Zone T1 Transitional District. As I mentioned, this is your introductory work session on this application. This is the city's second application under the new T zones, but as was commented on earlier tonight, of course, each application gets reviewed and considered on its own merits. You can see in the staff recommendation beginning on line 16, there's several key items numbered 1 through 5 that staff has identified, and as usual, the full set of technical comments are also attached, as well as there was a reference to public comments that had been received or submitted to the Planning Commission earlier. Those are also included in the attachments. You can see by way of timing section, in the timing section on line 308, the application was received on May 24th. It's now before you tonight on July 17th. And then staff would expect a resubmittal of the application on or about July 31st to respond to, of course, the staff comments, public comments, and comments from boards and commissions. But with that, by way of introduction, I'll turn it over to our case planner on this, Mr. Henry Zhang.
Thank you, Mr. Stoddard. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the Planning Commission. For the record, my name is Henry Zhang, Principal Planner with the Planning Department. Before I started, I need to make it very clear. This is not the phase 2 of the old park. This is a new case, and by right, case is site plan and the subdivision just happened to be by the same developer. So it's not second phase, and this one has been reviewed on its own merit. So there's no confusion at all for that. Now let's go to the staff report. Line 6, basically Planning Commission is requested to hold a work session on 2 related applications. In this case, a site plan and subdivision, which include the consolidation and re-subdivision for the proposed Lee Park Townhome located at southeast corner of Park Avenue and North Lee Street. An application by Madison Homes. Madison Homes proposed to demolish the 2 existing structure on the side and construct 20 new townhomes. Let's go to the site first on line 112. This site basically consists of the two parcels. Basically, it's kind of designated as mixed use by the future land use map. Specifically, this site is bounded by both sides by right-of-ways of Park Avenue and North Lee Street. On the southeast side of this site, there is a existing general commercial office building, also in the T1 district. And on the southwest side of this subject site is an existing 5-story vertical mixed-use building, which known as Broadway. And then basically across the Lee Street, there is an existing general commercial building, also in the T1 zone. It's a transitional district, excuse me. Further across the Parks Avenue, basically are two existing single-family detached homes in the R1B medium density residential district. Now let's go back to the line 101, this proposal. Basically, 20 new townhomes. There are 3 types of model proposed in this site plan. The largest one is the unit with 20 feet of the front width, and they have a net floor areas range from 1745 to 1771 square feet. And then there are 6 of them fronting on the Park Avenue. And then this larger townhome has a two-car garage. The other 2 type of units are basically the one with 14 feet of the front width, which has a square footage range from 1,000 to 1,248 square feet. And then the 16 ones, which is the last model, has a net floor areas range from 1,512 to 1,522 square feet. The staff, let's go back to line 17. The staff has reviewed this first submittal and basically finds this project meets all the zoning requirements, specifically the T1 transitional district, which has a very comprehensive set of indicators which on line 153 basically meet everything. This site plan doesn't requested any relief from those requirements. Both the site plan and subdivision plat generally address all the applicable city code requirements for site plan and subdivision, and also meet in generally with all those governing design standards and design guidelines. However, we noticed there are some key issues need the Planning Commission's review and consider. Basically started on line 30. Number 1, it's basically under the site civil and landscaping. Staff has requested additional information regarding the design between this proposed townhome and mixed-use building. Broadway building. On the July 4th, the applicant submitted a rendering, and then it's also included in this package, which they provide a certain cross-section, basically, define those spatial relationship between the 2 end units, lot 13 and 20, and mixed-use building. I think that some of the concern has been addressed with those cross-section. The second part of the site-related information is kind of mislabeling of dimensions. We need to additional information. I just read from here, including the setback of the proposed transformer from the property line, and length of the proposed T-shaped alleyway, ADA compliant route and ramp, so on and so forth. And the City's Forest Commission, they reviewed this case tonight, but we haven't received any written comments yet. During the DRC staff review, Arborist reviewed and then didn't provide any comments. But we do have, at least identifying a couple of issues here, include insufficient distance between the shade tree, because larger shade tree need, a minimum planting space between them in order to survive. I think in this case, the planting very close, like 20 feet, should be at a minimum 25 to 30 feet apart for those larger trees like, sycamore and like red maples. When they grow up, they are very big. And then the others, we also notify there's a bunch of the trees, 3 trees specifically, on the southeast corner of the site between those townhouses and the mixed-use building. They basically planted on the, proposed to be planted on the top of the storm drain pipe, which we find should be relocated. And then those issues may indirectly impact on the calculation of the site impervious areas and the overall tree canopy coverage. And then we asked for additional information to be provided. Issue number 2 is related to stormwater, sanitary sewer, and site grading, and same here. We identifying the various noting and labeling deficiencies, including missing standard city notes, lack of sufficient existing spot shots along the sidewalks of the North Lee Street, so on and so forth. And a revision also need to be provided, and a recalculation are needed. Issue number 3 about the design, we also noticed that since we have more townhouses this time, like 20, I think initial submission doesn't provide enough variation, either through design or through material use or a combination of all the design options. But the good news is that in the submitted color rendering dated July 4th, the applicant already started addressing those issues, and I believe you will see later on in their presentation, you will see the variety already provided. Issue number 4, same thing as we identified previously, not enough information about the signage, and then they may not have enough information ready because they can do later on through approval from the BZA, the package. The last one is the preliminary plan and the final plat. Those are some technical issue, very minor, has been identified. As I stated previously, line 140 staff report, they basically meet all the zoning requirements in the T1 zone. We have a table here, basically indicated what is still required and what has been provided. Line 162, site plan review need to meet the criteria stated in section 48-1141. We also provide a table indicated what's the criteria required, what the site plan has been provided. So in general, they are meeting all the requirements. I will try to keep it as brief as possible. And at line 287, As indicated previously, AAB will not be able to get the meeting together. Therefore, they will not provide a recommendation to the Planning Commission. I think to answer the question previously asked, AAB's recommendation is advisory, will not in any way legally impact on the Planning Commission's approval if the Commission decided to move forward. Yeah. Urban Forest Commission is basically scheduled to review this case tonight, and we need a recommendation from them. I'm sure we'll have plenty of time to incorporate them before we can, take this case to Planning Commission one more time later on. We did receive public comments. Specifically, we received a letter from the Broadway Condominium Owners Association. I saw Mr. Thompson here early, and basically their letter listed a bunch of the issues, and which dated June 24. We had a meeting. Basically, we organized a meeting, include all the staff, relevant staff, and also the engineering team. On July 3rd, 2024, we basically provide all the answer to most of the question. But I think we still need to have some answer. We task engineering to do some calculation. Basically, the major concern of them is the stormwater runoff of the site, because as you may know that the Broadway has underground parking garage, and then the water table of the site and the vicinity is very high. There is no water issues with this proposed development because they are not have any basement. They're basically on the slab and the 4-story above. But I think that those folks in the condo building, they're concerned about possible runoffs from this site, which will basically make their situation even worse. I think in this case, we're going to provide additional quantitative reduction. But for any redevelopment site by the current new stormwater management regulation, it's always a reduction compared to the existing site, because the existing site is all paved, and then the new development will have a lot of bioretention, and then they're going to basically hold water of 2-hour peak water runoffs up to 10 years storm events. So significantly will reduce any runoff, and I will let the engineer to provide more data to that. They're also concerned about the scope of the review, and they're talking about this rear yard setback. And as you all know, this is the corner lot. There's no rear yard. It's defined in the city's zoning code. Specifically, illustration number 2 of the zoning code, chapter 48, which show how those setback has been defined. If you have, if you have a corner lot, you don't have a rear setback. Even though the T-zone requires 15 feet of the setback, but in this case, since there's no rear yard, we only have side yard, so they provide a 10-foot setback as required. They're also concerned about possible life and safety between the space of the townhome and the mixed-use building. I think there's one citizen letter basically confused between the yard setback and building setback. I think for the yard setback, we talk about it's all required 10 feet because there's no rear, so all treated on other 2 sides are the side yards. So those are the 10 feet. And then in terms of building, the building adjacent to the Broadway building, they have up to 12.3, 12.2 different setback. And then the total distance between the townhome and condo building, we're looking at 22 feet right now. So they have their own setback of 10 feet, and then the building proposed setback 12.3 feet from the property line. So the total will be 22-ish. I think that's pretty much their major concern. I think we had that meeting on July 3rd. They are pretty much understand where we are and where the case is standing right now. In terms of the timing, Mr. Starter already mentioned, it depends on how quickly they're going to submit it. I think right now on the started line 313, we are expecting a submission 2.0 on July 31st. If they can submit that, submit the 2.0 on the 31st, we are expecting DRC review finish on August 16, and we can bring this case back to the Planning Commission for final action on September 4th. So this concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Zhang. Do we have presentation from the applicant?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the Planning Commission. My name is Andrew Rosenberger. I'm with Madison Homes. I'm joined here by Russ Rosenberger and Mark Westmoreland, also from Madison Homes. From Walter Phillips, our project engineer and landscape architect, we have Karen White and Lisa Boral, and from Devereaux and Associates, who's the project architect, we have Rodney Williams. I believe online from an undisclosed location, we have the property owner as well, Peruz Khan Malik. I'm very happy to be here tonight to present the Lee Park Townhomes. This is the second site plan application, as was referenced earlier, in the T1 zone. I'd like to thank Henry for his presentation and thank Henry and staff for the work that they have put into this project to date and will continue to do. I'd also like to thank the citizens who have submitted comments and were speaking here earlier. We do appreciate their input. All right. So to give you an overview of the project, that's the site plan on the right. Just for quick reference, Park Avenue is at the top, which is called the north. North Lee Street is on the left. So the project is 20 townhomes, as was said, in 3 buildings. It's a resulting density of 29.2 units per acre. And repeating what Henry said a little bit, there is a diversity of product type here. They're all townhomes, but they are different unit sizes. So we have 6 20-foot wide units, all of which are along Park Avenue. These will have 2-car garage parking, and it's our intention that they will also have elevators as well. There will then be 8 16-foot wide units and 6 14-foot wide units. So the average net unit size ranges from 1,000 square feet to just under 1,800 square feet, and the average as shown on here is just under 1,500 square feet, which is the cap. There is a 10-foot step back required along Park Avenue, specifically along Park Avenue, and facing the Broadway, which is at the bottom of the page. That's at the 4th level, so a step back at the top, above 40 feet. You'll see in some of our slides later, we're actually providing that along all of our frontage. From a parking standpoint, we are exceeding the parking requirement of 1.0. We're providing 1.3 parking spaces per unit, since the 6 units along Park Avenue will have 2-car garages. From a street parking standpoint, we'll actually be increasing the number of parking spaces provided on the streets on the frontage here, both on Park and on Lee. There'll be a total net increase of 2 parking spaces on the street. That's just as a result of reducing the number of curb cuts versus what's there today. We are meeting all of our setback and height requirements, and this is a by right site plan application, and we are not seeking any variances or waivers. I'm sure you're somewhat familiar with the site, but these photos show the existing conditions. Photo 1 in the upper left is standing at the intersection of Park Avenue and North Lee Street, looking essentially to the south or southeast. You can see the two buildings on the site. One's somewhat obscured by the trees on the left there, and the other commercial property, which fronts really onto Park Avenue. Photo number 2 is at the back corner of the property, looking into the courtyard of the Broadway in the background. Photo number 3 in the bottom right is from North Lee Street. The building on the left there is on the subject property, and the building on the right is the Broadway condominium. Photo number 4 in the bottom left is along Park Avenue, essentially looking down the eastern property line. It's not exact, but that tree is more or less on the property line. So to the left is a 2-story office building, which is located at 605 Park Avenue, and to the right is the subject property along Park Avenue. So we prepared several renderings that really, we think, really capture the project and what we're proposing here. I do want to make a disclaimer that we believe these are accurate, but to the extent that there's any details that are inconsistent with the site plan application, the more technical drawings in the site plan application will govern. But this, as you can see from the key in the bottom right, is looking from the intersection of Park and Lee, looking more toward the south. So that's units 1 through 6 in the foreground, and then going toward the right, that's units 7 through 13 along North Lee Street, and in the distance is the Broadway condominium. I will have our architect explain the design vision in just a moment, but I do want to highlight a couple of things, particularly on this slide. So if you look at the 4th level along Park Avenue, you can see the step back, which is 10 feet, which is the requirement from the street, or from the front of the building, rather. That's a required step back. Along North Lee Street, you can see units 7 through 13. That is not a required setback, but we are providing that, and that really creates a more consistent look. We know that there was also some concerns raised about the spacing of the street trees. We have made adjustments that's really reflected here, and more importantly, will be reflected on the second submission of our site plan. So we'll be increasing that spacing to 20 feet to meet the requirements. From a sidewalk standpoint, we are basically copying what we did at Oak Park. So in terms of the streetscape, the sidewalk hatching pattern and the brick banding, that will all be the same. The width and the fact that along Park Avenue, it will come out, the sidewalk will come out to the back of the curb in between the tree planters. As an example of how this is not perfect, you can see there's no brick in the sidewalk. It is shown on the site plan. We are intending to do that. It's, again, just a simple single band. It is not a brick sidewalk. Other items I do want to point out is that each unit will have its own individual bioretention facility box in the front yard of each building, of each unit. You can see them along Park Avenue. You can kind of see them along North Lee Street as well. That will collect 100% of the runoff from the roof of each unit. And the other thing I thought that this slide did a great job of capturing is really the massing and the height transition from the proposed townhomes zone transit T1 transitional to the more the taller and denser building along Broad Street, rather, which is in the background. And I think that's exactly what the T-zone amendments were trying to do, was to create that transition. And I think this slide really captures what we're trying to do there. At this point, I'd like to call up Rodney Williams from Devereaux & Associates to kind of talk through the architectural vision that we had for the project.
Hey, thanks. Hello. I am Rodney Williams, as Andrew said, from Devereaux & Associates. And this is a project that we're really excited about. I think the 10-foot setback on the 4th level works really well. If it wasn't a requirement, we probably would have done it anyway. It keeps the massing more at the street level. No one feels like overly small when they walk past a 3-unit townhouse as opposed to 4 stories above. But it still allows the owners privacy. If you see, I think I can switch to this one. If you see along the side, there will be some small rear decks, just for kind of like just grabbing some air and talking to your neighbors and seeing what's going on. And one of the comments we got from the earlier submission, I guess, was to try to make each unit kind of individual. So the massing is very similar, but what we've tried to do is change the color of the brick, the color of the detailing, and give some individuality to the front doors. The front doors are, kind of a different color, but still in keeping with the warm brick colors. We're proposing 4 different color schemes. If you can see there's a light one, a medium brown, and along there, I guess you can kind of see all 4. Maybe there's typically one that's all monotone. We talked about possibly a painted brick, but we might try to achieve that with a lighter color brick. And what our goal was to try to make something that was more transitional. It's in between your typical colonial and your ultra modern. And the theme of this one was to keep an expansive amount of glass within the bays and different styles of glass within the bays. And that's the system that you see here. We'll have casements in some areas within the bays with the deeper set windows. And within the normal brick facade, we'll have single hung, double hung. Again, with probably a brown or bronze hue to match the warm brick colors and the warm brick mortars that we're trying to achieve. And I think, besides the color of the front doors, I think the bioretention plan has actually helped this, and it kind of gives us its own individuality where you can see kids or people just kind of like congregating and sitting there and talking to their neighbors, and I think it's a good thing. And then as you go further down, I guess, there was a third one, or this is one. This is the one that shows a kind of a different level with the fencing area, but it still gives a sense of community, even though each one's a little bit different, but kind of the same scale, the same massing, but I think it gives its own individual unit, its own kind of, I don't know what I'm trying to say, like this is just a property ownership that this is mine and that's yours, but I have my own color. So when one person wanted to change brick color, change paint, whatever, they kind of keep it within their own, their own dwelling kind of thing. But you can see some of the detailing we try to invoke on the sides where the banding is typically at the brick head, at the water table, and the lower level between the first floor and then the second floor. And something that we also try to do, I think it's on this one, on the rears of both end units, we're going to have brick on all 3 sides going up the 3 levels, and then typically brick on the back up to the first level, and then siding. And then the siding may vary in the back as well to kind of give you the individuality of which unit is yours. So yeah, I'm very excited about moving this one forward and excited about the color schemes and the opportunity to work on it. So thank you.
Thank you, Rodney. So I'm going to go over some other items on these perspectives as well. So just to orient you, this is looking at from North Lee Street, looking into the top of the alley. You can see the 2-car garages and the decks on the buildings on the left, which is units 1 through 6. That's lots 7 through 10 on the right. One thing I do want to point out here is this right here is a utility shed that will house the gang of electric meters for that building, for that entire building. Each building will have one of those utility sheds, which will basically house all of the electric utilities, all of the electric meters for that building. So what that will do is really eliminate the electric meters from cluttering the alleys in the back of the unit. They'll all be ganged, they'll all be enclosed. These units will all be all electric, so they will not have gas. There will be no gas meters, there will be no gas appliances or gas heat. Everything will be electric. For reference, that The unit closest to us, that's facing us where we see the front door, that is a 14-foot wide unit. The unit next to that is Lot 8. That is a 16-foot wide unit. This perspective then jumps about 100 feet to the south, closer to Broad Street. So this is the same building basically that we were looking at partially before, but this is the entire building. That's units 7 through 13. You can see the back and side of Lot 1 on the left, and then on the right-hand side, you can see the Broadway condominium. This really captures the spatial relationship, which Henry referred to, between the proposed townhomes and the Broadway condominium. As Henry said, it's 22 feet, brick to brick, between the two buildings. We are proposing a low retaining wall and a 6-foot wooden fence just behind the property line. We have heard concerns and met with the residents from the Broadway about some of the plantings in this area, and in our second submission, we will have a revision kind of addressing these concerns. Specifically, we are reducing the number of canopy trees in this area, and we are eliminating conflicts with the underground storm line that runs through a portion of this area. I have another slide that will also address this area in somewhat different detail in just a moment. Oh, one more item on this. I also wanted to point out the step back at the top here. So one of the requirements of the T-zone is that there is a 10-foot step back required above 40 feet adjacent to a B district with an approved special exception for multifamily uses. That part of the ordinance was explicitly to address this situation in this exact location. And so we are providing it, you'll see it in the next slide, for both units. But you can see we're stepping back along Lee Street and also stepping back parallel to the Broadway. So this is the third building. I'll refer to it as the Muse building. This is from a raised vantage point. So that's Lot 20 on the left. Lot 14 is the building, Lot 20 through 14. That's the back of Lot 13 on the left. And just to the left off the picture would be the Broadway condominium. You can see, again, the step back at the fourth level for both here, Lot 20, and in the background, which is Lot 13. That's the 10-foot step back that's required along adjacent to the Broadway. This does reflect one change that is not in the current site plan application, but will be incorporated into the next submission, and that is that we actually increased the width of this courtyard area by about 2 feet, which may not sound like a lot, but it actually goes a long way. We were able to actually reduce the depth of these units on these two back buildings, and we were able to add that area to this Muse. So that really gives us the opportunity to provide additional landscaping and better landscaping along the property line, which will be just inside the fence, as well to create a more attractive Muse. We then created several sections, which you may have seen. So we just wanted to highlight some specific areas on the site which required some additional attention and explanation, and some additional graphics so that everyone can understand exactly what's going on. So this first section shows the relationship between the Broadway condominium on the right and, as you see, Lot 13 on the left, just on the other side of the gap. You can see on the right-hand side, there's a key kind of with the red arrows showing exactly where this is looking at the site. But this is accurately representing both the height and the space between the buildings. So as I said, it's 22 feet brick to brick. We have a 12-foot, 12.3 to get very specific, from our unit to the property line. The Broadway is 10 feet from their building to the property line, so 22 feet in total. We're also proposing a low retaining wall just inside the property line with a 6-foot board-on-board fence. And then parallel to North Lee Street, you can see there is a metal railing, 4-foot metal railing with a gate that is really to provide openness, visual openness from the street, but to also somewhat restrict the access through there so that not everyone is traveling through there. And again, I'm going to point out again the step back on the fourth level. So the step back is required above 40 feet. The height of the building here, as measured from the grade, is approximately 35 feet. From the grade to the cornice line right here is approximately 35 feet. So we're actually stepping back at a lower level than is required by the zoning ordinance. This next section has, from the previous one, you're walking forward into the site about 50 feet. So that's the back of Lot 20. You can see it on the right-hand side in the key. Looking at the key, this kind of shows the relationship to the Broadway as well. The Broadway in this instance is shaped somewhat like a U, or at least in this particular location, with two wings and a center private courtyard that they have right there in the middle between the two parts. So that they have a approximately 6-foot wall at their courtyard. And then you can see the building, which is the gray tall line on the right-hand side. That's the building in the distance, which is, it's still the same distance from our unit to the wall. When I say the wall, I meant the courtyard wall. So that's still 22 feet. And again, you can see the retaining wall as well, and the fence and the landscaping. This section then shows the eastern property line. So this is looking south, as you can see from the key, toward the Broadway condominium. So this shows on the right the end of Lot 14, and on the left there, which is that gray block, is the two-story office building located at 605 Park Avenue. In the middle is the property line. Unit 14 is 22 feet from the property line, and that incorporates that extra 2 feet that I had talked about before. So that doesn't show on the current submission, but it will show on the next submission. And total distance between the two buildings is 39 feet. Again, small retaining wall with a fence, and there'll be substantial landscaping along that fence, really to provide some variation and to make it that more attractive, and to provide some screening between the townhomes and the office building and parking lot and vice versa. Yes, right. So that concludes my presentation. We're all available for any questions that you have. The whole team is here and available. I do note here that there are some 2D color renderings for the fronts of all of the buildings. I did not include them in the presentation because I think the color perspectives better represent what we're actually proposing. But to the extent that there's any specific questions getting into some of the architectural details, I do have them. They're available. I can bring them up. I just didn't want to overload the presentation with that. So with that, if you have any questions, we'd love to hear them.
Great. Thank you very much. And thanks, Mr. Zhang and city staff for thorough presentation. As was mentioned, this is a work session item, so we don't have any comments. We did hear from some citizens earlier today. We had some written comments, and I really appreciate Mr. Zhang meeting with the citizens and taking the time to work with them. I think that was a really, really smart idea, so I'm glad you did that. Before we jump in, let me just ask one question, I think, for staff. There was a question about a legal question, I guess, about the consolidation, particularly whether or not the property at 609 Park assumes the attributes of the corner lot when it's combined. Can you address that concern that was brought up from the staff citizen comments earlier?
Sure. So a subdivision is a by right action. In this case, the proposed subdivision would meet all the legal requirements in terms of dimensions, lot size, and the like. And so the site plan would be considered on the consolidated parcel. Actually, consolidating parcels is actually a requirement of the city site plan code. And so ultimately, any setback requirements would be considered on the consolidated parcel.
Thank you. And the other question, the other thing that came up from citizens was around stormwater. I don't know if the applicant or somebody wants to address. I mean, this obviously seemed to be a big concern. Mr. Zhang mentioned it with the requirements that this is going to be retaining more stormwater than what exists today. But let's just go ahead and address that comment, because obviously citizens are very concerned about that.
Yeah. Hi, good afternoon. Karen White with Walter Phillips. And so what we're doing here is we are providing, I think, as presented, the bioretention planters. So each building will have a bioretention planter that the roof drain will fall into, and the water will slowly filter through that planter. And there's volume in that planter to store that water. It stores and cleans the water, it removes phosphorus. And the detention is in each planter and then goes into the system. Just so we know, we did have a meeting, there were some staff comments, and we did meet with staff on July 2nd and went through the design. They asked us to provide some more information, but we're overall felt we were in compliance with the code. So I can go more into detail, or I don't know if there are any specific.
I'm sure other folks will have questions, but I want to make sure.
Okay, just that's kind of the big overview, I guess, of where we are.
Great.
Thanks.
Okay. Again, it's a work session item, so let me turn it over to commissioners for any questions, comments, concerns for the applicant. Everything looks pretty good on this end? Huh?
Want me to start?
Yep.
Go ahead, Mr. Krasner.
We're not kind of going out of order there, we're not going down the row. But, okay, well, let's see. I mean, sorry, get on the mic here. Yeah, I mean, this is another, I mean, it's interesting to see the first couple of projects come in on two kind of, I mean, this is the larger property, but, two corner-like lots with generally the same geometry, and looking at the way, you're kind of responding to that, and I get it. I mean, it is what it is to some degree as far as the land uses that surround you and what the T-zone allows. We adopted an ordinance that allows a certain amount of density if you can fit it, and, it is what it is. But, just like on the other site where we had concerns about a row of townhouses facing a garage wall, we now have a row of units that are kind of crammed in the back, facing, again, also a blank brick wall on one side, at least for part of the lot. I don't know, that may redevelop one day. Probably will. It's T-zone. So maybe they'll be facing other townhouses eventually. They might, and it might actually improve the character for the fronts of lots 14 to 20. So, I mean, it is what it is. Density overall, I mean, I think is kind of baked into what we approved in the T-zones. I guess my more, I think, substantive question is about some of the widths here. I noticed that lot 10 and 15 are all the way down to 14 feet wide townhouse lots, which is pretty narrow. I mean, kind of for anywhere. I mean, even in like an urban setting, even like you look at historic townhouses in downtown DC or in Alexandria or in other cities, I mean, built in the 19th century, and that's actually, getting towards the smaller end of things. So I guess what was the thought behind that? Because those two are kind of, the only ones that are 14, the other ones are 16, which is narrow, but, probably more within the range, what you might see for a kind of a single car garage, kind of products. I guess I'm kind of rambling, but is there a precedent for that? Did the other project have, I know they're not the same project, different project, but did the other project a block away have any 14-foot units? Have you, has your company ever done 14-foot units in this market? And just what are your thoughts on that? And, was there any thought given to, I understand the idea about maxing out density, but, if that extra width was distributed amongst the other units in that row, they would all gain about 2 feet. Might be a little more usable, a little more marketable. I'm thinking about, again, the quality of the life for people who will live in these places. And so, anyhow, did you put any thought to that? Where did that come from?
Yes. So, quick, Oak Park, they were all 17 feet wide. Everything was uniform. Here we have 3 different unit types. So there are actually 6 14-foot wide units. Lot 7, Lot 10, Lot 13, Lot 14 and 15, and then Lot 20. Each of those is 14 feet wide. There is precedence for 14-foot wide units. The closest one that I'm aware of is at Graham Park, the old Loman's Plaza. They have a number of 14-foot wide units. It's in Fairfax County, but still within the same general market. It is a more urban townhome. It's not going to be for everyone. We fully recognize that. But what it does is enable us to vary our size, and it enables us to, by varying our size, we can vary our pricing, and we can hit a price point that maybe someone who wants a townhome, they can't otherwise buy. If they want a new townhome in the city of Falls Church, even inside the Beltway, your choices are very limited. So this opens up the market to a broader population who was seeking home ownership. From a livability standpoint, it's narrow. You'll have 2 bedrooms on the 3rd floor. You'll still have a kitchen and a living room on the main level. It's still a 1-car garage, the 16-foot wide units are also 1-car garage. It's a very similar unit. It's 2 feet narrower.
Okay. I mean, like I said, I think overall, yeah, and there may be, I'm sure there's a market for anything at some level. I mean, there's a housing shortage in the region, and I get that. And I think overall, that's why, density, I'm not against density at all, but sometimes I think targeted, design tweaks to make the other units, more, I don't know, kind of a better product. I don't know. Like I said, I understand, why people want to have additional units, on a project. I get it.
So the way just quickly on that, the way the TU zone is written, we couldn't actually redistribute that. If we were to get rid of those units, we couldn't redistribute it because of the 1,500 square foot maximum cap on our average unit size. So we are just under that as currently designed. So if we were to,
you'd have some extra open space, which might not be a bad thing for these folks. But it is what it is. Like I said, I understand it. It just shows you how hard it is when we try to design a T-zone standard and kind of roll the dice and see what we're going to get. There's some things that are good, and then there's some unexpected things. And anyhow, but that was my main concern about whether or not that, the rationale there, and I think I get it. I would say that I'm glad to see that you've tried to improve that area on that adjacent to the office building and make that a little bit better. It's not as tight as the situation on the other project up against the wall of the parking garage. So I think will be better than that, and it's a lower rise structure, and one day that may go. Unlike the parking garage, which is probably stuck there forever, at least for a long time. That building may go, and there may be townhouses there one day, and that maybe would work. They might face each other and be a little more of a neighborhood, instead of feeling like kind of the crammed in the back. But anyhow, you answered my question. I mean, I appreciate you answering the question, honestly. But that's my my big picture comment on that. On the stormwater, and I apologize if that was just answered, but I know, I think the folks at the beginning, I know there was some concern about the maintenance responsibility. I mean, even though they're on the individual lots, the HOA
will maintain all of the stormwater.
Would maintain everything. It's not going to be up to individual homeowners, right, to maintain those BMPs.
Correct.
Right, that's what I thought. Okay. That's it for now. I may have other questions later, but that was kind of my main comment at this stage.
Thank you, Mr. Krasner.
Go
Mr. Ivor.
Because some of my things follow up. Mr. Krasner said, so I just wanted to go next because I think I have some follow-ups related to unit size. I mean, it's an interesting project. It's definitely different than the Oak Park, right? Project. I mean, different lot, more units, and then just I was expecting more uniformity across these units, just like there was uniformity in the prior development that you brought before us. But I see how, you've made some smaller, you've made some larger. And I just want to focus a little bit on the larger ones. You said that because you mentioned the average unit size for T-zone has to be 1,500, but you've got some larger ones, right? And then some smaller ones.
Yes.
And that's where you keep your average. But let's talk about these larger ones. 18 feet, right? How many?
20 feet wide.
20 feet wide, 2-car garage, right?
Yes.
And did you mention elevator?
They would potentially have elevators, yes, private elevators inside the units. And our objective with those units is, I talked about the 14-foot wide units kind of opening up that market. By having call it a larger unit with an elevator, it really allows someone, what we see is someone who probably lives in Falls Church right now in a single-family home. They're done with the maintenance. They want to be in a more walkable location. They do not want to leave Falls Church. This is the perfect move, called a move-down switch for them.
Yeah.
And that they can maintain their current lifestyle, they can improve their current lifestyle.
So, yeah, no, I agree with everything you're saying. What are we talking about price point on these type of units?
So the smallest units will probably start in the 8s. The most expensive units will probably be approximately starting at $1.4 million, $1.5 million.
$1.4 million, $1.5 million for a townhome. So again, I think there was a lot of discussion. I mean, you knew I was going there with this, is affordability. I mean, and, you know, and this is not a knock on you as the developer, but we need to think about what we just designed with the T-zones. We have enabled somebody to come in and build a 1.5, probably 1.6 by the time you're done, townhome. This is not affordable housing. And it's like, oh, okay, we thought when we did this with the T-zones that we would get $800,000 townhomes. I thought that was too much, but I could tell there was an appetite for that type of a unit in this town because people were comparing 800,000 to 1.5. But now, with what we've just designed, we have a 1.5 in front of us. What were we thinking? So, you know, again, it's more about us as planners, us as designers, and we tried to do the best we could to put limitations on the T-zones so that we would end up with 800,000. And we knew it would go up a little bit, but I don't think anyone in this room thought we would get a $1.5 million townhome in front of us for the second T-zone application. So I would suggest that we be a little more cautious and careful. I know this took us 2 years to get through the T-zone, but I don't think we did a very good job. If our goal was to keep units at a somewhat affordable price. So this is a problematic, it's problematic from our side, not from your side. You are absolutely right. There is somebody who wants to sell their single-family home and move into this 1.5 million. You have a market. You're going to sell this. They're going to go fast. I think Mr. Krasner is right. The 14, foot units, you might have a difficult time. But let's understand, the 14 units are there, foot units, in part so that there's the availability to do the $1.5 million. Because you could redistribute this. This whole thing could be redistributed to keep your average of 1,500 square feet, but you're not going to get a 1.5. So you made a calculation to, make some smaller ones, but definitely have room for the bigger ones, fit it within the average, and get a big price point. So, I don't know if we thought about that. I don't think we did. And we're getting what we get. And I'm sorry to go on and on, but I don't mind the $1.5 million. I think it's great. I mean, the stuff that you proposed on the first Oak Street, I said I would buy it. If I get 5-10 years older and I'm still around, I'll probably sell my home and move into something like this. I think it's a great product. But there are no affordable housing requirements for you. That is also our fault. We should have thought we would get 1.5 and put requirements for affordable housing. We could have got 1.5 and truly affordable housing with all of this T-zone development, and we didn't. We're not doing equitable growth. We are doing growth for growth's sake so we can fund the baseball stadium and fund the schools, and we're not helping the most vulnerable populations in the DMV. So I know we're gonna talk about stormwater runoff, and we're gonna talk about the siding and the color and the door color, I know that's important to some of you. But what's important to me is that we got affordable housing on the growth that we are doing, and we're not getting any of it. It's a missed opportunity. And we are going to watch the next townhome development come through on this. It's going to be 1.6, 1.7. Maybe we'll max out at that. What are we doing? So could we please think about the tax base that we are going to garner from your $1.5 million units that you got, 6 of them, and they're going to sell, and we're going to get them, and we're going to get an increased tax base. But could we please put some of that increased tax base in our affordable housing fund? This is getting ridiculous. So I know we can't do anything on affordable housing on this deal, but clearly we have gotten a deal where we have gotten units that are way above what we thought they would ever be. I don't know if it's an unintended consequence but it is a consequence of our planning, which has been poor planning if we consider equitable development. I don't expect you to respond to this, but I know that people in this room have heard it. I know it's recorded, and I hope that people chew on this and think about it. And actually, I hope that the next townhome presentation that comes before us in the T-zones, that a developer will actually bring affordable housing with it. You have brought step backs that you didn't have to bring. You're bringing maybe more stormwater management that you didn't have to bring. You're doing it because you're getting complaints by the neighbors on this. Maybe next time, if you come before us again on a townhome deal, which you likely will on a T-zone, you might want to think about maybe having one of the units cut up and be affordable. And when I say affordable, I'm just talking about like a $400,000 unit. You could cut up two of these and have them at $400 each. And that would be closer to the notion of affordable housing. Maybe we'll get that, but maybe I'm just doing wishful thinking. So I'm going to stop now and turn it over to my other commissioners. I know they have comments on a lot of other components of this deal, but I just wanted to point out a couple things that I think we failed on. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Stevens.
Okay, well, sorry to have to go next because I don't have anything quite as lofty as my colleague just had. First of all, thanks for making them all electric. I think that keeps a trend going that we have in the city of avoiding gas connections. A lot of problems with that. So I recall on the Oak Street units, you made them solar and EV charger ready. Are you going to do the same thing on these units?
We will do the same thing. They will not be solar, but they will be solar ready.
That's what I meant,
Yes,
solar ready.
yes.
Yeah.
Just
Okay.
wanted to clarify,
In
yes.
other words, the roof can accept a photovoltaic system.
Correct.
Right. Okay. I think hopefully you'll even advertise that. A lot of stormwater issues. I think this is probably more for staff. There were a lot of stormwater issues that were raised in Mr. Thompson's letter from the condominium, and I think it'd be helpful in our next review of this to have those all kind of put together with kind of a clear statement from somebody presumably in Department of Public Works that could at least make those of us that are not stormwater engineers feel a little bit more comfortable. So, things like, first of all, just to make sure that the overall code has been met in terms of our stormwater regulations. Mr. Thompson's letter mentioned things that they're doing in the Broadway to deal with stormwater, and some of those reflected pipes that apparently would affect this project. So it would be helpful to know that is okay, that there's not a problem of water coming back the other way. Has the 20% minimum permeable surface requirement been met? How's that being measured? These are things that I'd like to hear our staff opine on and kind of advise us. The retention tanks, you mentioned that each unit would have one of these retention facilities. And there was a question raised as to whether or not they're permeable. Just things like that. It would be helpful to have some of those, kind of basic questions answered. We mentioned the planting of the shade trees on top of an underground storm pipe, so I think you addressed that. But again, that would be nice to have all of these issues that relate to stormwater kind of put together in one place and have staff be able to advise us on that. A lot of other kind of odds and ends that were on here, but basically I think the project as a whole is going in the right direction in the sense that we have the code, it's more or less lining up with the code. A lot of opinions obviously on things like architecture, and by the way, I liked the treatment on the corner in the front on Park and Lee. I think you had a much better arrangement, at least from my uneducated perspective on the window treatment there. Again, on Oak Street, it was kind of more of a very small window, almost a blank wall kind of looking. This seemed to have more of an urban feel to the way that you designed that corner, so I appreciate that. So I think that's all I have for right now. I'll cede my chair to somebody else.
Thank you. Ms. Coleman.
Sure. Thank you, first of all, to Mr. Zhang and to the project team for being proactive and meeting with the Broadway residents. It sounds like it was a really productive meeting, which is definitely what we want to see. So it sounds like they identified a couple of items that are going to be resubmitted, a calculation of the pervious area and an analysis of the sort of on-site stormwater reduction pre and post-development. So we'll look out for those for the next submission. I was going to ask about the maintenance of the planters by the HOA, so it sounds like that is the plan, which is great. Glad to hear that you're kind of rethinking the shade trees in this area to make sure that they can thrive. They have the space to do it. I wondered about, and I might have missed this in the package, but did you provide any analysis of turning movements for vehicles? I know that was another item that was addressed as a potential concern.
There are turning movement diagrams within the site plan application showing the fire truck as well as cars entering and exiting some of the garages.
The garages, okay. And is this a situation again, I must have missed those, I'm sorry, but is this a situation again where people aren't going to be having like a Tahoe in here? What kind of car?
Yeah, correct. This is not built for
Tahoe
a
territory.
Very few garages are built for Tahoes.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I think that what the car that's shown typically on our AutoCAD illustrations is a medium-sized sedan, which can even include like a Toyota Highlander SUV.
Okay. Okay, great. Yeah, I think a lot of the items that I was going to ask about have already been addressed, so looking forward to the next submission.
Great. Thank you. We're down here. Mr. Duncan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for this application. I'm going to take a crack at being lofty like Derek, but I'm going to hold that for just a second and ask some more pedestrian questions just about issues that you've raised. So you spoke about the electric utilities being boxed and obscured and so forth. That's good. How does the HVAC work? Do we have HVAC units that, the fans fire up and so forth? Where do those go?
So it shows actually on these. The HVAC units, let me get the right button here, are on the roof. So similar to what we did at Oak Park, they will be located on the roof. They will not be located on the ground in the alley, or certainly in the front. So the alley will be decluttered. There really won't be any meters or any sort of equipment in there at all. That's our intent. And then there will be screening for the HVAC units as well.
Okay. That's commendable, I think. I don't know, I'm becoming more sensitive to noise in suburbia for some reason, but maybe it's because my neighbor is always washing his deck with a power washer. But, particularly in this kind of weather we've been having, the firing up of the air conditioning units is something that when you put this many people together in a close space, it needs to be done as thoughtfully and with as much muffling as you can possibly manage. Next question is about the stormwater issue. So I'm anticipating that this is going to improve the situation for all the reasons that have been discussed. And all I'm asking is that as you head into construction and you get out there on the ground, that you've had conversations or have ongoing conversations the Broadway folks and their vendors, whoever they've used, whoever they've given $300,000 to try to solve their water problems, so that, when unexpected things pop up, something that you discover during the construction process, we have some flexibility and we have some responsiveness to, this gives us an opportunity. There was a reference to some water conveyance. It's not clear who belongs to it or what it does exactly. I mean, just watching the work up at Founders Road 2 near my house, the neighbors have seen things that if we'd known, we'd have done a little differently at the beginning. Trying to be nimble in situations like that would be desirable. So I'm just asking for post-application approval, continuing dialogue between your water people and their water people, because we are concerned about the existing residents, and maybe this gives me an opportunity to make sure we thank the Broadway folks who are continuing to be helpful and substantive and civil in the presentation of their concerns, which are understandable. So that's just a request. It's not something that we, I think, have stipulated before in our, special exception process necessarily, but I'd like to make sure that, particularly in the water issue, that gets taken care of here. You mentioned Graham Park for the 14-foot wides. I've driven by there and noticed that. And where is a comparable back alley treatment that somebody could drive to and say, okay, so my Tahoe won't fit, I'm going to have to downsize to a Highlander or a sedan. Over at Mosaic, are there other situations where the alley width and the garage turn movements are similar to what you're offering here?
I can't speak to exact dimensions. We've certainly done this sort of treatment on numerous townhomes throughout Northern Virginia, suburban Maryland, and DC. We've had alleys that are, I would say, roughly the same depth to provide the same amount of room to enter and exit the garage with a vehicle. It usually does not require a multi-point turn. It requires attention, certainly, but it does not require any heroic efforts to get your car in and out of the garage.
Okay.
For example, I think during Oak Park, I referenced townhomes that we did in Roslyn. We used that specifically as a sidewalk example, but that was very similar. Those were actually 2 rows. Those were all 2-car garage townhomes. Those were 20 feet wide, so a very similar unit to what we're proposing along Park Avenue, and just in terms of basic shape and size. We actually did have a buyer who had an extended cab, Ram truck, and it would fit in the garage, but the garage then wouldn't close. So it was a problem. And that house was not for him.
Yeah.
Or at least not with that car.
Yeah, right, exactly. Okay, good. It might be helpful if there are specific instances that pop up that we could say, yeah, drive over to so-and-so and see how it works, you know, it would help. Help sell the units, which we'll sell anyway, but it'll just help people visualize what we're doing here. Also, with the previous development, we did spend a fair amount of time one night talking about candle power and so forth, and just want to make sure that we're happy here with the lighting situation in the Muse area, or whatever we're calling that area that sides along the side. Have we come to, did we benefit from what we learned in Oak Park?
It'll be a very similar situation. There, if you recall, we had some low bollards along the sidewalk. We're proposing the same bollards here. So, you know, we are focused on safety in that area, and there was definitely lessons learned from Oak Park, and we're applying those here.
Okay, good. All right. All right, well, just in brief and in closing, thank you for bringing this forward. Thank you for working with the neighbors. I know it's been a challenging process and will continue to be a challenging process, having, you know, lived with construction at the intersection of Broad and West now for several years. I guess I would ask, again, in the nature of what happens after the site plan gets approved, to try from, you know, start to finish to condense the construction into as tight a period as possible, and be especially sensitive to the conditions of the construction site as you build. I mean, I get it that people who are working in 100-degree heat, you know, are not going to worry about tossing every can into a trash can, but, you know, you're building a nice development, right, you know, in the very near proximity to a nice development, and there's going to be a need for continuing community dialogue about, you know, the impact of the construction site on the neighbors, and I hope that you'll, you know, apply staffing to that just as seriously as getting the thing built. Now, finally, in closing, this is pretty much exactly what I expected when I supported the T-zone reform, because of the nature of the lots that we're dealing with, both at Oak Park and Lee Park. You know, this land is just insanely valuable. I mean, people just cannot seem to get it in their head here in Falls Church how valuable the property really is. You know, at the chamber lunch yesterday, on Tuesday, there was a real estate guy there. He said, you know, the starting price now for any dwelling in the city of Falls Church is $1.1 million, and it goes up from there. Now, there are a few exceptions that you can still find, you know, something under 800,000 or 900,000, but, you know, we just live in an area where the values of land are so great that the economics, if we're going to make improvements, if we're going to improve the current situation that we have at locations like this, just demand that we, you know, work with the market enough to provide this. This is because you have provided 2018 and 14-foot units, actually does open the door for housing affordability that is not available in any other place in the city. And that's good. And what's going to happen is exactly what Derek said. You know, people are going to sell their, you know, 1960 brick Rambler for $1.2 million, and they're going to, because they're older and they don't need as much space, and they're going to move into one of these $1.5 million elevator townhomes. And that's great, because the house that they left, somebody can slip in there and buy it for barely over $1 million, which is, you know, sounds like a crazy amount of money, but it's just the way it is. You know, truly affordable housing here is only going to happen in the context of a dedicated building or buildings. It is not going to happen at a pace that we need it to happen if we try to integrate it into these, you know, properties on land that is so very valuable, because it is within walking distance of all the fabulous amenities of the New Falls Church. You know, when we're looking at Virginia Village or Ellison Street, you know, that's where our opportunities for truly affordable housing are, because then you can design from scratch buildings that are tailored towards larger families probably. They have amenities that are different from elevator townhomes. It's just, the strategy that we are aiming for with T-zones is exemplified by this development and by Oak Park before it, but really even more of this project here because, you are going to be offering a product, hopefully, when you get finished building it, that will sell for less than what any other single-family dwelling house in Falls Church is likely to sell for, certainly anything new. Maybe you can buy, a 1948, Cape Cod like mine for $1.1 million, but you're not buying anything new with all the amenities of modern living for anything around that unless we encourage, and look for more opportunities to build some products like you're bringing to us here. So that's the end of my attempt at being lofty. I mean, we all up here share a deep concern for affordable housing. And there's going to be a time and a place, I hope, for that to be pursued. Right here, right now, tonight, this project, takes us towards a better future of more variety and newer housing. At a price range, even $1.5 million is going to be seen as a real reasonable price tag for a brand new elevator townhome by the time you finish the project and open it up for sale. So I look forward, I hope, to be around when we get to that point, and certainly look forward to working with everybody on truly affordable housing, which is going to need to be, as I've said, in a different location with different amenities and just a different mindset than what we are aiming at here with the T-zone reform. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Freelander.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's really difficult to go after all of you guys. But I agree with a lot of the sentiment that has been already expressed. I really do appreciate that you've picked up a lot of the comments and the ideas that we discussed with the Oak Park and really put them into practice, at least in terms of the architectural design, to see that variation, to see the larger windows, to see the different proportions start to play out. I think it really makes us feel a lot more successful in that regard. So I really appreciate the thought process that went into it, into the design. And I do think the Muse, depending on what happens in the property next door, that could be a really great neighborhood if it shakes out that way. As if the fence ever does come down, depending what goes next door, right? I think a lot of my questions are going to come back to a couple of basic items, and one of them is for staff. And it's a really basic question, and I should probably know the answer, but I don't, and I'm going to ask it. So all of the projects that we are reviewing are planning around a 10-year storm cycle, right? What we're seeing over the past few years is a lot more intensity of storms and a lot more frequency of those types of storms. And so I'm curious, is it a state requirement that just hasn't quite been updated, that we're only planning for a 10-year? Or is there another reason? I just don't know, and so I'm going to ask the stupid question.
I don't know if you have a better answer. So obviously every project is designed to code, and then there is enabling legislation from the state level that stipulates what can and can't be considered in stormwater code. The city is also undergoing an update to its stormwater code, and one thing I might be able to do is reach back out to the stormwater team and ask them if they might just do a special briefing for the commission, because it does come up so often on applications about what are the requirements, what is the flexibility within the code, and how are these kinds of things assessed, right? We use the words like quantity and quality. What do those mean? What are the requirements for different applications? How are those things measured? I think knowing sort of what's involved and how it's done might provide a lot of clarity.
Thank you.
I think the short answer is, actually, there is state code mandates about the 2 and 10-year storm. Unless you're in an area where there's like existing flooding, sometimes you do have to detain the 100-year, but usually it's the 10-year. And that's in state code for by right development.
Okay. No, I knew there was a good
Yeah,
reason.
if you look at the Chesapeake, if you Google Chesapeake Bay Preservation Act, and you're really bored, you want to read, you want to learn about it.
I don't have enough to do right now. It's true.
There you go.
So I guess, and then as follow-up to that, I know that there's been a lot expressed about, the neighboring property, their concerns about how they've been managing their own stormwater issues. I did have a question specific to, there was a letter from Mr. Thompson at the Broadway that mentioned event, that in the event that their capacity is exceeded, it will discharge into very adjacent to the property line. And so I just wanted to understand how that gets, or make sure that, is that something that is required by code for us to be reviewing when we're looking at that 10-year storm, right? What happens with the adjacent, knowing that there's an event that could potentially discharge more at that property line into the same system that is the city system. And so it's really a city question, is how are we handling that, those calculations as a whole when we start looking at these larger developments that are going to be charging the system more, and what is currently what we're accommodating currently in that 10-year cycle or in that emergency cycle, right?
Yeah, I'll take a stab on this one. Yes, I think they raise a very legit, concern. Actually, overall, the city system has a problem. I think the picture show in the letter, which is that kind of a specific event, which is much higher rainfall in a long time, the city system cannot handle it. To answer prior question, yes, this project meet the current code, both the state codes and the city codes, and then actually they are a little bit above and beyond that. But I'm going to work with currently stormwater management has been reviewed by the third party, is a consulting firm hired by DPW, and then in the next submittal, I'm going to ask them to provide a very detailed calculation, and then just to give a overall picture of how this project will be doing, and then how the overall city system in the vicinity will be doing. But in general, we have problem, the citywide system. So.
Understood. I think we've talked about that. I think this is going to start to implicate needs in our CIP that we're going to need to start really addressing as more and more of these come online. That, in addition to the sanitary infrastructure that we have, because these units have, we're going from literally 2 or 3 structures that are small, which to 20 units that have 3 to 4 bathrooms in each unit, full bathrooms in each unit, that it looks like. So I think we really need to, as a city, start really bubbling the urgency up on both the storm and the sanitary, to start resolving that now before these projects come online and we say, oh, we knew we had a problem.
Sure. We're going to provide answers in next submittal.
That would be helpful. And overall, I think I'm excited for this project to move forward. I think it's a really great reuse of those 2 lots. And I think you've really taken to heart a lot of our comments and previous comments. So I'm looking forward to the next submission. So thank you.
Thank you. And thank you to the applicant. This has been a really good conversation. I really appreciate the comments from my fellow commissioners. Big issues, stormwater, obviously, and affordability. I think we should be talking about these issues as much as we possibly can, so I'm really grateful for the conversation. We should keep talking about it as much as we can. We don't always get what we want in some of these, but we shouldn't stop. So in the interest of time, I don't have any major problems with this. This is all, I appreciate the clarity from the applicant and all the materials you presented. So unless there's anything else from anybody else on the commission, Mr. Stevens.
Yeah. Is it safe to assume that the nice illustrations that you had in your presentation, that we'll get something like that in a future iteration that we have a chance to look at more carefully? It was pretty skimpy on on this go-around as far as the the illustrations.
Are you referring to the
Basically,
perspectives?
yeah, your whole presentation, and I didn't really see too much along those lines in the materials that we got, unless I missed it, but...
So these got finalized at about 1:30 this afternoon.
Right. So that's what I'm just saying, you know,
yes,
if we could
they-
see those in the next iteration.
Yes, yes. Yes, and again, we do have, that we prepared for the AAB, we prepared obviously 2D color elevations, front, back, and rear as well for each building.
Anything else from staff on this? Mr. Stoddard, Mr. Say?
No, nothing else from staff. Thank you.
Okay. Great. Thank you very much. We'll close the work session item. Appreciate it. We look forward to seeing you guys again.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, information items. Let's see if we can get this done before we have to move to extend the meeting. Planning Commissioner reports.
We can do it.
8A. Any Planning Commissioner report? Not to dissuade you from reports if you have them.
I don't have a report, but I did share the attachment that's included in 8A. Kind of an exciting development. Fairfax County is submitting a grant, applying for federal grant money to fund the development of an active transportation plan for Route 29, and that would go from Hollywood all the way up to Route 7. So and it says, the article says that they're going to coordinate with Falls Church City, and just generally sounds like they're walking away from their comprehensive plan called for a 29 to be expanded to 6 lanes rather than 4, and so they're walking away from that. It does not fit with their vision for the county. It's just like, this very exciting to read. So hopefully they'll incorporate some great bike lanes. I think we have our own, the South Washington bus stop expansion and access to transit. That's approved and underway, right, Mr. Stoddard? So I don't know, it might be early, but like they're aware of our project in Falls Church City.
Yes, so obviously at the staff level, they had coordinated the application before they submitted it. It's common whenever we get close to the border to work at the staff level. So they had run the language of their application by us, and I think we were certainly comfortable with it. And I think the idea of thinking about a multimodal future for Washington Street and 29, within the project limits is very exciting. And they are aware we had partnered with them, right by way of counterexample. We had partnered with them on that grant application for bus stops and transit access. And our application actually goes onto their side of the jurisdiction line, so we had to partner with them in the submittal anyway. So we have been talking to them about the scope, and I'm looking forward to a new future on 29.
Yeah, it's exciting. Anyway, thank you. Just wanted to share that.
Good stuff. Other reports? Mr. Krasner?
Not really a report, but I got copied on, from the economic development folks, and I think we're invited to this as well, so maybe we'll get our own personal invitation, but they're having a tour of the Broad and Washington building next Thursday from 12 to 1. Thursday is the 25th of July. Letty sent it out and said that the Planning Commission should be invited as well. So if anyone wants to go on that, I don't know if we have to RSVP. It sounds like Maury Stern is going to be leading the tour, and there was no real cap on attendees, so maybe they wanted a head count. I don't know, Paul. You were copied on that too, so.
Yes, so if you reply to Jack and me, we'll get the responses over.
Yeah. But
Thursday at noon.
Thursday at noon. Yeah, a week from tomorrow at noon. So.
Will you or Jack send the info out to the commission?
Yes, we need to forward that over.
Okay.
Wasn't there also an event at the new hotel up at West Falls that we were invited to? Yeah.
Same day? Oh, we're so popular.
No, I don't think it's the same.
Our social calendar's filling up.
Anything else, Mr. Howard?
Just a quick update on the affordable living policy update. Paul came to our last meeting, gave the committee some advice about land use and how to change land use to maybe get affordable housing, but Paul gave a really good presentation that I think some of the people understood. Some of them didn't. That's okay. We don't have all experts on land use on there, but we have people who are dedicated to trying to advocate for affordable housing. But I did want to mention one thing that we did was to unanimously approve in the update an increase from 6% to 12% of units being affordable in our mixed-use multifamily developments going forward. I don't know if City Council will approve it because we propose changes to the policy and then it has to be approved. It'll be vetted by staff and also people will lobby to change it. But there was a unanimous approval on that. To double it from 6 to 12. So it'll be interesting to see if council approves that, because that will change things a bit. It'll change calculations of people who are coming in to do our big developments. So that's one thing. Also, I wanted to mention that in that update will be an ask for a dedicated revenue source coming out of the annual budget to the Affordable Housing Fund. We don't really have that. And then the other thing, the last thing that we've talked about here is every time the CIP has come before us, I've said we need to have affordable housing in it, and constantly staff has said we can't do that. Well, there's been a lot of talk, and Mr. Duncan, you mentioned it, about doing big projects that have affordable housing that are standalones, like the Fields and, Virginia Village. And if we are going to execute on any of that, we have to have long-term bonds that are floated, that are part of our capital improvement budget. So if we want to execute on those, we have to have affordable housing in the CIP. If we don't have it in the CIP, we will never execute on the lofty, big, affordable housing deals that we would like to do going forward. So those three things are in the update. It is to be seen if council approves it, but I'm hoping they do. And that might affect things that we do here or things that come before us here. So I just wanted to mention that.
Very exciting.
Could I ask, does the product of that committee go straight to council? It doesn't come through us, does it, or does it?
We had a discussion about how it would be vetted when it's completed by the committee and which boards and commissions would review it to give comment. I know there's going to be a public comment period, but I don't know if it's going to come directly to us as a draft, meaning the Planning Commission, or to any other place. It might be just it'll be sent out and people will be asked to comment on it for a time period, and then it will be finalized and then brought before the City Council. So I can't say I'm 100% sure of what the vetting process will be when the committee's done before it goes to council, but there will be some period of public comment.
Well, that's good. Good work on all those points. I guess I would just ask that when the product of the group is done, even if we're not specifically assigned to speak to it, that we try to schedule some time to talk about it, and maybe have a letter from the chair or any and all of us that want to sign it, if we can agree on, a few key points to emphasize to the council. I think that would be additive to the process.
It's a great idea. Staff can help us do that?
Yes, as a placeholder, we'll include it as an unscheduled item, and that way, when it does get referred out or made available through public comment, we'll pick it up that way.
Thank you. Okay. Director's report. 3 minutes.
All right.
Or we can extend. Should we move to extend now? Maybe want to
it might
a quick motion.
Yeah.
Move to extend the meeting 15 minimum, 15 more minutes.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, I'll use the 15 plus the time I already had. Three things that are...
the whole time, Paul. We're just giving you a maximum not to exceed.
You're kind of into my time here. If I could start with the look ahead, I never like to surprise anybody. Ms. Basemore, if we could go back to the agenda, actually, which is included as an attachment. And if we go to the second page, I don't want to miss the affordable living policy here. Is there a way to zoom in? Okay, this is getting better. Maybe another click or two. So two things to make the commission aware of. End of July, one's a weekday, one's a weekend. We're holding the first community open houses around accessory dwellings. Of course, we're in the early stages of this thing, and so we are going out to these open houses to one, communicate out what are accessory dwellings, how do they typically get constructed, what form do they take, what are other places doing around regulating them, and then asking, obviously, the important question about sort of what people think is appropriate for regulating them here in Falls Church. So that is July 23rd, which is a Tuesday, next Tuesday, and then July 28th, which is the following Sunday. Let's see, for your agenda, August 7th, your next regular meeting, again, a full night. Founders Road 2, you had seen this before. If you remember, it was that moving metal sculpture with the seagrass for Founders Road 2. Because of their VCs, that's coming back to you as a site plan amendment, so that'll be for your final consideration. Commercial building parking relief. We had originally thought that was going to be on your schedule tonight. Due to the way we forgot about July 4th when we put in our ad order, so we actually missed the advertising date to hold it tonight. So instead, we'll schedule that for your next regular meeting, August 7th. There was quite a bit of concern or conversation about it 2 nights ago at council, and I guess concern that they hadn't actually heard from you yet, and so they are looking forward to receiving your recommendation and thoughts on that. Bike plan update. We had held a series of walking tours led by Carrie Odinino to talk at the neighborhood level about the proposed routes. A lot of good feedback, questions about parking utilization, pedestrian safety, really looking for more of a complete streets approach. So that will be coming back to you on August 7th. The intent is to keep the plan on the same track, which is getting to final consideration by council this September. And assuming that part goes on schedule, then what we would do is refine the designs with the input we got from the community and take that back out for a second round of neighborhood meetings in the spring of next year. And that would still be well ahead of any construction or installation. And then accessory dwellings coming to you as a work session item. You'll see the same presentation that Mr. Traynor has been taking out to other boards and commissions, as well as using at those open houses. Let's see, those items bounce over to council, then back to your group. I know we had done a quorum call for August 7th, and we're good on that night. August 21st, I think we were going to move this down to September 4th, just based on sort of the resubmittal timeline. And if that holds, depending on when they resubmit, then we would probably be looking at maybe an open night on August 21st, so we might look for an August recess on that night. I'm seeing heads nod in agreement. I even got a thumbs up. So we'll look to keep that night free, and that would mean September 4th would be an important night. It would be a work session on accessory dwellings, final action on the bike plan, and then you're assuming the resubmittal and the staff review are satisfactory, final consideration on the Lee Park site plan. Any questions about the look ahead?
No questions, but I know we have just barely a quorum for August 7th, so folks who said they can be here, if you can't, let us know as soon as possible. So,
otherwise, you'll all be expected on August 21st, because you do, under the charter, have to meet once a month. So if you can make it that on August 7th, that would be great. Somebody gets in trouble. Well, I would argue that it's part of good public transparency, right? That people have an opportunity to come and see what the Planning Commission's doing. So I don't know, democracy's, yay democracy. So let's see, switching over to the director's report. So 3 things, I'll run through these that were not in the report, but I certainly wanted to make you aware of. This is good news on a number of fronts. Number 1, if you may remember, as part of the special exception for the Quinn proposal, they had offered to install a pump station for sewage so that it would go up into the 4 Mile Run sewer district, which is managed by Arlington County. We did get a letter back from Arlington County. They have agreed to realign the sewer district so that we can formally make use of the capacity that the city had already the populace, the people had already purchased. So we have the ability to do that. Let's see. Oh, and I have been in contact with the Quinn team. They're expecting to submit their site plan probably around mid-August. So we would look to bring that to you about a month after receipt. Over at the West Falls project, the grocer has now been announced. It's going to be a fresh market. This is at that prominent corner of Broad and Haycock in the ground floor of the larger apartment building.
We win any records or break any records for having the most grocery stores, like per capita of any jurisdiction.
So we're still catching up to where we used to be. So
no way.
Can you find that? Because I asked this question years ago and I got a great report of, groceries in Falls Church circa like 1966.
Oh, it was something like 7 stores.
Yeah, we had like 7
they
or
were
8.
smaller formats, but it was 7 stores.
Of their time, they were supermarkets.
I have searched for that. That was a Deborah G. special. She really had a skill at doing some of that research and writing, and
down somewhere.
I had a copy of it, and I am searching for
This will
it.
be grocery store number, is this like
7.
Is it 7?
It's somewhere in my basement, damn it, and I'll see if I can find it.
I mean, this is like people saying Manhattan's overcrowded, and it's still below population where it was in the 50s.
Yeah, we're at the
and
grocery
somehow they
capital.
managed.
It's amazing how many grocery stores we have. Jeez.
And then lastly, the 2-year work plan, which is sort of the fiscal year department initiatives paired with the calendar year council priorities. That was reviewed positively by council this Monday night. Once those documents are all in final form, I'll of course share those with the commission so that you can see what the council committed the city to, and then what the city government is trying to get done over the same time period. Then into the actual report. So number one, can we, are we able to zoom in? Sometimes I miss the old projectors in the, that were on that side. They were bigger. They were yellow, but they were bigger. Let's see, City Hall bike parking shelter. This is something I wanted to make you aware of. So with the approval of the City Hall site plan, when the building was expanded and renovated, under the zoning code, there was a requirement to install covered bike parking. Originally, that was thought that it was going to go at the corner of the building where the date stone is. If you're facing the front of the building to your right as you're wrapping the corner to the police entrance, there is a landscaped area. It actually has some really nice cone flowers and some other things in it. Staff, well, in this case, DPW was the applicant. The applicant thought the bike parking was going to go there. They later discovered some water issues, and so they approached us about what could they do on flexibility, and we actually said there's a lot of flexibility. So they had explored reusing some of the parking spaces. Of course, under the zoning ordinance, there's a requirement to get that bike parking within 50 feet of the primary entrance, so they were really restricted in what areas of the site they could look at. So they had looked at some of the parking spaces in that front drive aisle until someone pointed out that's where the farmers market happens every week. And so ultimately they landed on a location that's near the flag poles. I think it's actually in the attachments if we're able to jump to that. There we go. So if you can imagine, this is there's a plan view on the left and then a perspective view on the right. So if you can put yourself sort of here standing, I don't know, like 25 feet off the ground. You're very tall, but you're looking at the flagpoles from the drive aisle. So those are the existing flagpoles. Those would remain as is. We would install an ADA compliant ramp to actually get people to the flagpoles, which is an important part of accessibility. We would install trash cans, benches, to make that more of a seating plaza area. And then beyond the flagpoles, there would be a small concrete pad installed, and then the bike parking would happen to the left. So it would be very much visible from the front doors, and it would seek to expand and create a real space out of those flagpoles.
This is good, but I seem to recall there was illustration of this about 4 or 5 years ago that was presented to us. Do you know, is this the same thing, or has this been scaled down a little bit?
It's actually the same thing. So you're correct on the timing. It was several years ago that staff presented options for different shelters in terms of color design and style designs, and we had taken that to the Planning Commission, to the AAB, and this is taking that input and moving forward with it. So that's that. And then next item in the director's report. Let's see, this is the Broad and Washington site plan amendment. This was done administratively. It was a series of changes as they went through final engineering. So I want to just make you aware that this was approved administratively. There was a rework of a crosswalk ramp so that we could provide 2 ramps instead of 1 at the corner. That then led to some changes in the angle of the crosswalk. But that was all done to meet ADA requirements and spirit. And then there were some final changes made to engineering the stormwater and the sanitary sewer connections. There might be an attachment for that one as well that we can jump. Well, it's going to be a bubble diagram of a site plan sheet. This is the notice we said, the required notice we sent out to area property owners, and then the bubble sheet identifies sort of the locations of all the changes. So that's just as an FYI that was approved at the staff level. No changes to the facades or the architecture or the building setbacks, anything like that. And then the last item that I had written up is actually sharing the Planning and Zoning Quarterly Report. Emily Bazemore actually is the one who does the effort to get everybody organized and get this report produced. As usual, it captures 3 months of activity looking back, and then projects forward at least 3 months into the future about what's going on with each project. And actually, if we're able to jump to the report. And Emily, I'm kind of putting you on the spot here, so this is an invitation if you want to take it. But if you want to walk through the highlights, the certifications everyone earned over the last year, and then, of course, how we're aligning our work to the strategic initiatives.
Yeah. So with each iteration of this quarterly report, we have personnel highlights. So for this particular report for Q2, you'll see that we included some certifications received by different team members on the planning team. So we have Kurt Lawrence receiving his lead Green Associate certification back in March. And then we have a couple of certifications received in June. So those are Certified Zoning Official, and Laura, Angel Willis, and Henry all received that certification. And then Jack Trainer received his AICP also in June. Let's see, we also have some highlights regarding our planning advance. So we attended our quarterly advance at the school office building downtown and did some professional development, leadership development, focused on communication styles and leadership, and it was a lot of fun. There's a little picture of us right here down at the bottom. And then, yeah, as Paul said, there's also now a page in the report that's highlighting the department's strategic initiatives produced by council for calendar years 2024 and 2025. So you'll see the projects on the left-hand side of the table. So like One-Stop Shop, the Bicycle Master Plan, the upcoming comp plan update for utilities and facilities, as well as some other projects that are in the pipeline, and kind of where we're at with those based on this past quarter, so Q2, so April through June of 2024, and then some projected highlights for July to September of 2024, so what we can see coming in the future regarding those projects. And then, yeah, throughout the report, it's the usual, so community engagement, regional coordination, updates on current planning, long-range planning, transportation planning, zoning. So, yeah.
Thank you, Ms. Bazemore. And that concludes the staff report.
Great. Thank you. The report is really, really excellent. Just tons and tons of work in there. It's very helpful to see it all written out. Okay, any additional correspondence, Ms. Bazemore?
I think that's it.
Okay, I think that's it too.
Just one thing, Paul.
Mr. Duncan?
ULI TAP money that we got for Gordon Road, did that get announced?
So we did receive, we highlighted it in the report, but you're right, I probably didn't do enough job of celebrating it verbally. So the city was awarded the TAP. I had included the application in a previous update to the group. That was awarded by ULI and COG. And so we'll be meeting at the staff level with them to map that out. But just to give everyone a sense of what to expect over the fall, it either happens sort of fall or spring, but we'll be obviously at the staff level collecting information relevant to the area, the need for the property yard, the need for the unhoused, shelter for the unhoused, as well as sort of surrounding projects and land uses and vision for the city as already adopted in the West End Small Area Plan, Comprehensive Plan. And then the ULI TAP, which of course is a panel of experts including architects, engineers, developers, finance, range of disciplines. They'll hold a series of stakeholder interviews with leaders throughout the community. They'll do a site tour, and then they'll convene their panel of experts and think about sort of a sort of a feasible plan for the future that meets all those community needs. They'll present that in an open presentation to the public, and then after they have a chance to make that presentation, they'll finalize a written report for us. By way of example, we've done this successfully in the past on both the West End and the East End, and a lot of that thinking for the West End is actually what came to fruition in terms of the mix of uses, the density levels, the arrangement of the land. So really it can be a formative report and exercise.
All right. Thank you all very much. A very productive meeting. Thank you for joining us tonight, Ms. Bazemore. Thanks to the staff, thanks to the commissioners. We're adjourned.
Oh, we're all here. Can I ask if we could get a group picture of everybody?
We're all here.
This may be one of the few times until Labor Day.
Worn out. Fresh.
The bags are deeper.